Hard AF Seltzer is now live in over 2,500 locations across the United States. We're now available in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina, Ohio, and Texas. Go to hardafseltzer.com today, click on the store locator, enter your city or zip, and find the nearest location closest to you. Welcome to Drinking Bros, presented by GhostBed.com. Yeah, welcome to Drinking Bros, kids. Big Tuesday show today. Huge. We got a legend with us in the studio today. Lara Logan's here. Let's give some applause for that, Delco. She's earned it.
Say your name out loud, man, please.
Lara Logan.
Laura.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Right out of the gate, you're fucked up already.
You're welcome for it.
She's been famous for like 1,000 years.
It's on purpose. She knows.
Is that fake applause? Because I don't do fake.
Yeah, we don't. No, it's real applause.
Can we get you guys to clap
thousands
back
of
there?
people
I don't want
back
fake
there.
applause.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Have I been saying it wrong forever? Is it Lara Trump too? Did I call her that wrong to her
Lara.
face as well?
I don't know.
I don't know if I did. I'm not sure if I did.
It's Lara without the owl, like Laura.
Nah,
Laura is
Lara.
misspelled.
Bob's Midwestern. Give me a Laura. Give me a Lara.
Lara.
There you go.
It's
No.
Lara
Lara.
Logan.
Lara.
Lara.
Yeah, Lara. There you go.
Was that warm or is it cool?
It's warm or cool. You know, maybe throw a U
I
in there.
can't do
Who
it with that
knows?
bullshit.
Dr.
Me
Zhivago.
neither. Yeah.
Dr. Zhivago, Lara's theme.
Oh, it's true.
One day, my love. Da 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 da.
I haven't seen that movie in forever. One of the best, though, of all time.
Yeah, you were born the same year that came out, I think.
Sure wasn't, dude. I'm 33 years old. Laura
You're
knows
33 years
okay.
old?
Laura, yeah. Same age as Jesus. Same age as Jesus. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
One of my favorites of all
Makes
time,
me
by the
your
way.
mother.
Yeah. It does not.
I'm 53.
Are you really?
I could have had you at 20.
You could have. My mom had me at 20.
There you go.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah, it was a different time back then. So, yeah, you were good.
Back then, in
Back
the
then.
mid-70s.
Nobody's having kids now.
In the mid-70s when you were born, yeah, that was a different time.
Nobody's having kids now. Everybody's waiting until they're 42 and then trying to get out of their apartments for the first time.
Don't get me started on that.
Oh, yeah.
That's
I'm
by
sure.
design.
It is by design, which we'll get to it today.
Okay.
First off, I want to say, watched you through my entire life. Huge fan of yours.
Thank you.
Growing up, it's awesome that you're here today. We appreciate it.
I like your studio. It's pretty cool.
Thank you very much. We worked hard on this, and it looks somewhat professional.
Did we,
you know?
though?
We did.
Who's the we? Because I didn't do anything.
Well, I wrote a check to somebody.
Yeah,
And
okay.
I think it made it look good. Delco's waving his hand back there. He did a good job
pretty
as
sure.
well.
Delco and then Giorgio did the
Delco, did you do more
lights
than
here.
anyone else here?
That's in this room
That's
right
in this
now,
room,
100%. Yeah.
Is in this room?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
one of our old guys, Giorgio, started his own company, did a lot of stuff too, but for the most part.
He did a lot of the stuff,
Yeah.
but we take the credit for
I don't
it.
think I've tried your seltzer yet.
Really?
Would you like
want
to?
some?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we get her,
I'll grab some out of the back.
Some of the good ones
Okay.
in the
Grab,
back there?
grab the new ones out of the back fridge over
What are the
there.
new ones?
Oh, the new ones are delightful.
Well, there's peach,
I like
watermelon. You like peach? Peach
Yeah.
will be fine.
And they taste like liquid Jolly Ranchers. Are you a Jolly Rancher gal?
Sort of.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't really understand Jolly Ranchers because it's supposed to be a candy, but it's like an experiment in torture and interrogation. It could glue your mouth together, but you
Yeah.
just got to be patient.
You got to be
There you
careful.
go.
Yeah, see, I'm not patient, so you give me a hard candy, I crack that shit.
Okay.
Done.
Yeah. Well, this one is
Yeah.
just
You
a
got no
liquid
time for that
version of it,
bullshit.
too.
Yeah.
I don't have
Yeah, I
time.
got it, yeah.
I do not understand people that can hold on to that for like 30 minutes. Who are you? Who are you? So the first time you do that with a Jolly Rancher, you find out.
Well, you
Yeah.
wouldn't have
Yeah.
survived in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. You would have been out
No, I
like
would have
immediately.
eaten everything.
Like
Yeah, you
that-
would have been
what-
gone.
What was
I
that
would've
plum
eaten
girl that
everything.
ate the shit? And
Was that? No, that wasn't Victoria
I don't know.
Beauregard.
Veronica.
Veronica.
Yeah.
Veronica.
Veronica.
Augustus!
We brought one of the most famous journalists of all time here to talk about fucking Willy Wonka.
I don't
Well,
think
I will
we did.
say,
For an
I will
hour.
say,
Try and give her the watermelon.
very
Give her
much.
the watermelon
Yeah.
first.
Oh, green apple.
Green apple's the best.
Green
Oh,
apple's
I want
bomb,
green
too.
apple.
Go with green apple. I'll take the watermelon, Bob. Let's do it.
Yeah, but
Let's do it.
Okay, so
you.
I
Thank you,
played.
Bob.
I was in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory as a kid, but I was Charlie.
Really?
Yeah.
So I just watched my kids do the play a couple weeks ago, and
Oompa,
and
oompa.
yeah, they got to do
Oompa.
the whole thing.
I didn't realize they did that in kids' plays. I thought it was like Oklahoma and shit like that.
No, for children, they love Wonka.
Yeah, Charlie is a good one.
Yeah, because Chalamet brought that back, so now it's in their world.
I mean,
now.
it fetishizes candy a little bit. I don't know if that's good for kids.
I think that's
it's
very
fine.
good for everyone.
I think so too.
I'm not a big candy guy. Like, if they made a musical about steak, you've eaten steak at my house before. If they made a
Yeah.
musical about steak,
Yeah,
I
you're
would be
not a
all
bad
in.
chef.
Yeah.
He's
I
a
will.
good chef,
Do
actually.
you have a bit more furniture now?
No.
No. Does he have any
No.
furniture now? No,
No,
he
it's-
doesn't.
it's-
No.
He's still
There's
single.
more furniture in this room
Yep.
than there is at your house, Dan.
Yeah, there's enough for me to sit down on because that's who lives there.
Yeah, and that's it. But then don't invite people over
No, we're not doing that.
because there's nowhere for them to sit.
I actually,
true.
Yeah.
you know what I do need is new bar
What?
chairs. 'Cause I have a nice
Oh.
bar
And a
there.
wife. Do you have any hot single friends for Dan?
Well, I mean, I'm a girl. Of course, I have hot friends.
But are they single?
Well, some of them.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not really an issue for me.
Yeah. He's fine either way. He's fine wrecking a marriage. You know?
Dan's sitting here like, I got this covered. I'm not exactly looking for help, okay?
No, he'll wreck a marriage in a second here.
You want to get married, Dan?
Yeah, big time.
How old are you now?
43.
Oh, yeah, it's time.
Yeah, you would
What
say
about
so.
you?
huh?
This time I'm married. My wife was just here.
Yeah, she's the blonde
She's
you met
beautiful.
when you walked in.
Yes,
yeah.
thank you very
Yes.
much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, he doesn't
I
deserve
took my
it,
time.
You paid her?
No, look.
He pays her.
I wish. There's been payments made in the past to other
Yeah.
women, but
don't-
what?
no.
I try to sweep that under the rug.
You brought it
Okay.
up. You brought it up.
Yeah.
I did. In fairness, I did bring
I had
it
a
up.
lawyer named Michael Cohen, and I told him to shut the fuck up, but
Oh,
he didn't.
yeah, but he didn't listen.
He sure didn't.
So the first rule of finding a lawyer is you can't get one that's so dirty, he's definitely going to turn on you when they get him by the balls.
True.
Yeah, you
Very
need
true.
to you need to
that's
find
Michael
somebody
Cohen.
that's really smart but also a
Yeah.
coward, right? Like
Yeah.
Saul from Better Call Saul.
Yep.
That dude is never going to roll on you because he's a bitch.
He sure
He knows
isn't.
that I will cut his head off of his body and mail it to his family. You know what I mean?
Unless
Yeah.
he's more scared of the DOJ and the deep state than he is of you.
I mean, you're going to die one way or another. You can hide from them. You can't hide from me. I'll find you.
You sure can't. Delco, is her volume good? Okay, good. Just checking.
Mind your fucking business,
Yeah,
dude.
checking
What are
in.
you worried about her volume? Worry about your volume.
Been doing this for 4 years. I think I got it.
Hey, we're all just checking in here because we're all
4
over the
years.
place, and I love it.
He's been doing it for 4 years.
He's been doing it for 4. We've been
He knows-
doing it for about
he
9.
knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
That's
He's
fine.
good, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to question it. If the audience bitches, they bitch. But you're here at a perfect time. DNC just started last night. Did you watch any of the convention?
It's hard to watch.
Oof. Tough one.
I was begging my husband for mercy, but he was like, we've got to understand and
He'll
know."
never turn it off.
Oh,
He was
no.
probably sitting there tweaking the whole time, yelling at the TV, right?
I sat through it.
Well,
I sat through it.
It was hard.
Well, let me ask you this. Why was it hard for you? And then I'll tell you why it was hard for me.
Okay, so first of all, some country music dude ended his career last night at the DNC.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who that guy was, but okay, I live in the home of outlaw country. Fredericksburg, Texas is 10 minutes from Lukenbach. Anyone who knows anything about country knows about Willie Whalen and the boys.
Yep.
Right? So some tragic individual standing up there in a tuxedo with a lone guitar singing some awful song. That ain't country.
Is this
Very country.
Jason Isbell?
There it is.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
was
really?
him last night, yeah.
Poor guy. I'm sorry. Nothing
sad.
personal, but that is the fakest, most pathetic attempt at trying to reach a certain demographic in this country that I have ever seen. It
Isn't
was
he the
pathetic.
drive-by truckers guy?
We
Is
call
he?
it counter programming in the biz.
I felt really bad for that guy. I mean, I am not musically inclined, but even I could tell listening to him, the man is shy on talent.
Yeah, that's the drive-by truckers guy?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got a real fun story after this show, but
Tell him this. Fuck him.
can't sign an NDA on that one.
Oh, I didn't sign that. So you
yeah.
can tell
Yeah,
me.
we-
not to
Well,
sign
we
it.
signed
did for the
nothing.
company.
You signed?
Yeah,
I didn't sign.
yeah.
No,
I
we
signed
didn't
on your
sign.
behalf.
I've never signed an NDA in my life. Anytime
did it
anybody's
once, and I
presented one to
regretted
me,
it.
I've told them no.
I had to sign on your behalf on that one,
Oh,
but fun
twice.
story afterwards. But with the
So,
rest of it,
okay,
what did
but-
you think of the speeches as it went along?
Well, this is the thing about it, though, right? Is that guy represents something that was consistent throughout the night. When you see these people holding up USA signs and then, chanting USA, where do you hear? Okay, the worst protesters in the world are Trump followers. Okay, they just don't do chants. They're not organized. They don't really care about that stuff. You listen to them even on January 6th, where they had all those instigators in the crowd. They could barely keep a chant going for 40 seconds. You go to an Antifa protest, and what do? You've got a series of chants. They're all planned out in advance. They know exactly what to say. They never stop. They never shut up. Okay? It's part of the training. So when you see them last night, you see them, they're trying to chant USA. Who chants USA? Has that ever been chanted?
Yeah, at a WWF event. When Hulk Hogan comes out, you start chanting USA.
That's right. But not at a place, let's face it, at the party that is currently burning the U.S. flag on a regular basis. It's not believable. So what I heard was also, we're the party, who cares? And if I hear one more person say, a better, brighter future.
How can you say that when you're the one in charge? That's the confusing part.
What could be more insincere?
I agree, and that was my biggest issue last night, where everybody who came up and spoke said that we're going to change this.
Yeah.
Once Kamala gets in the White House, we're going to change this. Once she gets in, we just got to get her in.
But she's in.
She's in.
Yeah.
So you could do all these things that you're talking about right now. I think that's one of the biggest disadvantages for me personally. And I'll put my hatred for Biden aside, and just because of the last 4 years, just because of what it's done economically to our country and our personal businesses and things like that.
I don't know. How about thousands upon thousands of dead Afghan allies who have been tortured and murdered because we gave an entire state over to jihadi terrorist organization?
That's not great.
I mean, and what about women who are currently Afghan women who were trained in civil society organizations and are currently in prison in Afghanistan being gang raped on a daily basis? I mean, what about that? You know?
The illegals that are coming in through the border, all that other stuff. But last night, what I found interesting personally was he didn't want to go, and it was
and they pushed him to fucking midnight Eastern too.
Pushed him to midnight.
Goddamn, this dude operates between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. and that's it.
And you had to get everybody up there to pay homage to Joe Biden and what a great president he was on a Monday.
Yeah.
And let's face it, this goes till Thursday. You put him on opening night. Amber Rose was the opening night guest for the RNC, for Christ's sakes. Biden's there. They push him out the door. And then as he's doing interviews, because I flip around all the networks and try to check it out, especially CNN, even Pelosi on CNN was this close to saying, she said, not the word coup, but she said, we did what we had to do as a party.
Yeah.
Which is pushing him out the fucking door.
Okay, so two things. So as a journalist, one of the things I often look for is the signs of organization, manipulation, information warfare. I'm particularly focused on information warfare because we are in the midst of fifth generation warfare. This is currently a war for our minds, right? It's an undeclared war. It's covert in many ways, but we have gone from where propaganda was a weapon of war, one of the tools in the toolbox on the battlefield, to where your mind and the information war is the battlefield, right? So when you see certain things, so you hear the repetition of the word joy. You know, this is joyful. This is
weird or whatever.
Weird or whatever. They've decided that this is the theme. So you see how that plays into it. But the other one is just what was really noticeable to me was how they're stuck with the same old information warfare talking points.
Yeah.
Like they brought up the same old, there's good people on both sides.
Well, Biden said that in the same speech. So he said the good people on both sides, the Charlottesville myth that's been disproven by everybody, right? Includes Snopes, which is a left. But
there is a video that debunks it.
But then he goes on to say
of the actual speech.
Yeah, then he goes on to say that the Palestine protesters outside are they got a point, guys. They got a point. Like, sorry, the people out there talking about Hamas? Removing Israel from the planet,
face of the earth.
Yeah,
talking about genocide.
They have a point.
Let's be clear.
Like that's his good people on both sides moment. Like literally, and nobody in the media is talking about it today.
That's
Not
right.
Fox. Nobody's talking about it. That was him actually doing what the fuck they accused Trump of doing for years.
Right.
But crickets. You know
crickets,
what I mean?
yeah.
It's the iron law of woke projection.
So this is what I do. I understand that we are in the midst of an intelligence operation. So if you really want to understand what's going on around you, think of it in those terms. The agencies are calling the shots here. Okay? Every single thing you're watching has been orchestrated. It's by design. So some of that is not ideal from their point of view because they're under pressure. How do you know they're under pressure? Well, because it doesn't help them that they have a candidate with dementia who's been replaced in a coup. That doesn't help them with their own supporters, right? So those are decisions that are forced decisions, but they are nevertheless still by design, right? So when they picked Kamala Harris, they could have picked, Hillary.
Yep.
They could have picked Newsom. They could have picked Michael. They could have picked any of them, but they didn't.
I'm sorry, Michael?
Yeah.
Big Mike?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Big Mike.
I just didn't want to gloss over that.
No,
the
she's
reason-
in on the no, dude.
Well, the reason I say that is that people are not going to take that. They're going to ask questions about that. They're going to raise that, right? So I don't know if that's true or not true. I have no evidence of that. I haven't investigated that. How would I know? But what I know is that people are no longer going to quietly accept these decisions. So two things that were really interesting to me yesterday. Before I watched the DNC, I saw a piece on CNN where whoever the White House correspondent is with the silvery hair, he was interviewing a white woman who said, I'm sitting here kind of reluctantly and uncomfortably letting you know I'm voting for Trump because of this, this, and this. Like in 2020, I did not vote for him, but now I have absolutely no choice. And when they asked her about Kamala, she said, dishonest, fake, woke, too progressive, too far left. So that was on CNN. Now, when you think they have what's called information dominance, right? So they dominate the entire information space. And there's an organization, Media Matters for America. I don't know if you...
Yeah, well, I know Media Matters very well.
Okay,
Yep.
so you know that Media Matters, David Brock, these are political assassins and paid propagandists whose only job is to destroy, right? And divide. But what is David Brock graduated from Media Matters? Because now he's set up this ecosystem that kind of runs itself to a degree. Well, what he's got is Facts First USA. What is Facts First USA? Well, their stated mission is to keep all right-wing propaganda within the right-wing bubble. What is that really telling you? That they're using their information dominance to prevent people from ever hearing anything we say on this show or on another show. So when you have information dominance and you're controlling, like for example, in 2020, half the country never saw a Trump rally.
Yeah.
They had no idea about the tens of thousands showing up everywhere he went because no one on that side covered it.
Yeah. You also have to wonder how much of an effect that had on people's ability to know that Joe Biden has vascular dementia.
Correct.
Because
That's
we were
exactly
talking about
the
this
same
in like
thing.
2019, early 2019.
That's a great example, actually, because if you just watch stage managed clips and you had people saying that he's, hearing people say, I'm with him every day and I don't know what they're talking about.
Sharpest he's ever been.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
if you hear that, you might actually believe it.
We talked about this 3 weeks ago about some Zoom calls from the campaign from 2020 leaked. And they talked about how they were using basically the same tactics Cambridge Analytica were using back in the day to target people based on demographic and psychographic information on the internet. And anytime they searched for something like Joe Biden dementia, they would get fed, instead of actual clips of him being retarded, they would get fed multiple clips of him being super sharp and edited together. Right?
Yes, and can I just say, I love how they say tactics of Cambridge Analytica because that's such a full guy kind of bullshit.
I mean, they just did good marketing.
But they're just a patsy.
Yeah.
These are really the tactics of information warfare developed by the United States government. This is the specialty of the intelligence agencies. This is what they do. So anytime you see Cambridge Analytica or somebody else using it, it's been farmed out. They're still running it and controlling it. So I come back again. The framework for everything that we're looking at is this is an intelligence operation. And so if they have information dominance and they cannot keep out of the conversation the fact that you've got people who are now have changed their vote for and they're speaking. You had a few African American women who they were stopped, I think it was someone from Turning Point USA who interviewed them. And these were average, ordinary people out there who both said, they're trying to sell the black thing. We're not buying this. We know this. She was an Indian before she was black. Now she's black. No, we see. And it was great listening. But that was on ABC News. That was Martha Raddatz from ABC interviewing them. So do you see how the truth is breaking through the information dominance?
Yeah.
And how they don't want that to happen. So that means they're under pressure. There's cracks that are in this stranglehold that they have had on us in terms of information warfare. We're breaking through. The truth is breaking through.
But is that because of us or because of the actual media themselves who looked back at the last 4 years and said, all right, we lied to them for 4 years.
No.
If we keep lying to them, they're not going to believe us. Then who is that exactly?
Okay, so imagine you're at war with the Nazis. Do you really think that overnight the Nazis went from saying, we hate the Jews to, we've been a little harsh? That's what you're looking at, right? There's no, expecting that people within the media are going to recognize what they've done and recognize how people feel is like asking the SS to be accountable for its actions.
Yeah, you know what's funny?
They're still the SS.
I tweeted something like this yesterday. I finally watched that movie Civil War.
Oh, yeah.
And all that entire movie is just a masturbatory fantasy by leftist journalists.
Shaping operation.
Certainly that's part of it too, but it's just a fantasy world where journalists in America in 2024 stand up to fucking authoritarianism in government.
But who's the authoritarian?
Instead of falling in line, yeah, exactly.
Trump and his supporters are authoritarian.
The B plot of it was just getting to see a Trump figure get shot on camera at the end of the movie. That's the second part of it.
So look at what that is. That is a shaping operation that is meant to prepare us if they can't stop Trump winning the election. We now have the playbook for exactly how they're going. One of their lines of operation is that they will create that he's a dictator, and so ordinary Americans, great people, have to stand up against him and take the country to civil war to save it. They have already set the stage. That's called projection, because they're projecting onto the other side their own actions, right? Because we already have a dictatorship to a degree, and it's only going to get worse. And number two, it's called shaping. So here's a classic shaping operation from 2020. On the day of voting, when the polls close, it's going to look like Trump was winning. But when all the mail-in ballots are counted, Biden will win because more Democrats vote by mail.
Right.
That was a shaping operation that was meant to make you believe the steal, and it worked.
Yes, and during that night,
even though we have footage of people bringing in boxes and boxes of stuff from under tables, and footage of dudes putting up cardboard on windows so people can't see through, people still believe that everything was up and up. It's very bizarre how easy the human mind can be fucking duped.
There's still 140,000 votes locked in a warehouse in Georgia from Fulton County. It's where I'm from.
They're going to have there'll be an incident. It'll flood or something, and you'll never see that.
I agree. It's been going. This lawsuit's been going on since 2020. Nobody's been able to see it, and that's what happens. And it was the same thing. We were live with Alex Jones that night, and he told us the exact same story from the get-go. Live on 2020, he goes, here's the thing. Trump's going to be up by a lot. They're going to call it in the middle of the night, and then wait for the mail-in ballots. It's exactly what happens. I thought, and I've said this on the show many times, that when Biden was driving down, I thought he was going to give a concession speech. And he didn't. He said, hey, we're going to wait. And I was like, no, we're fucked.
Yeah, it's the same thing that happened with Rutherford B. Hayes back in the late 19th century, by the way. He was getting ready to give a concession speech. And the party was like, no, you're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. And the Associated Press and Western Union started putting out fake bullshit about how Rutherford B. Hayes had won. Right?
Yep.
And everybody stopped the vote and all this stuff. And they stole that election for him because they wanted to end Reconstruction in the South. They didn't want black people to have rights there.
Yeah.
And that was it.
That was it.
This isn't the first time it's happened.
Yeah, and let me ask you about last night, because I did watch Biden's interview on CNN afterwards, where they asked him about getting pushed, I'm going to use air quotes, out of the election there. And he said, they were worried about the down ballot in the Congress and the Senate, which was interesting to me. He almost threw Kamala under the bus as if they didn't care about the presidency. They really cared about the Congress and the Senate. What do you think personally is going to happen in this election?
Okay, so I always caution people, I'm not a prophet, right? And so, I'm just a journalist, and I don't like to speculate, but I can tell you what I see, what I know based on experience, and what I see happening. So one of the things that a number of people have mentioned to me is that if they can't, one line of operation that is being considered by people in intelligence, because they know how this works, is that if you can't stop Trump from getting into office, you concentrate the cheat on the down ballot. So you give people what they want. Nobody wants to challenge the election result because they got the result that makes sense to everybody. And you take away the House and the Senate. So he's crippled. And then you impeach him for good.
Gotcha.
And once he's impeached, it's game over, right? I mean, it's open season for they can destroy him and make sure he never comes back. Now, I can't say that is what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do, but it is when you start to think the way they think and look at the world the way they look at it. Like, another line of operation potentially is an assassination attempt on either Kamala or Waltz that is then blamed on Trump supporters, right? You don't know what they're willing to do. But if you believe that accountability is coming, if they're held accountable, I mean, this is, we are reaching sort of the zenith of an operation that has been many, many, many years in the making. And we know these are very powerful people. Do you really think they're going to just even if Trump won the election and they lost control over the steal, you really think they're just going to let him come into office and, I see, direct, the Justice Department to hold Comey, Clapper, Obama, Biden, Sally Yates, Peter Strzok, Mark Elias. You're just going to go and arrest all these people? Hillary Clinton?
Right.
Fusion GPS? What is that? Like, how are you going to do that?
You're not going to, and I think you're right, but does that mean you think Trump is going to win and then they'll lose the House and the Senate?
Well, the Democrats can't win without black people, and black people are not voting in the same way that they were before. As a matter of fact, that actually might help with the protest chants a little bit because they're better,
Yeah, they are better.
More rhythm.
Yeah,
better songwriters.
White people
Get some black people out there.
Also, did you notice how scarce white people were on stage last night? I'm going to go where nobody else wants to go.
Sure.
I was going to say you have a chairman and a deputy chairman of the convention who were both African American, and there was another African American.
Well, they're not though.
There was another African American couple.
Laura, you're African American.
You're a real one.
Those people have never been to Africa.
Yeah, you're a real one.
Okay, they're black, whatever you want to call them. Yeah. Then there was an Indian woman who was part of the White Earth Nation, Wolf Clan. I mean, if anything sounded white supremacist,
I forgot. We didn't even talk about that. They started off the goddamn DNC with we're doing this on stolen land. One of those fucking speeches.
Yeah.
Like it's not. We didn't steal your land. We took it.
It's called a land acknowledgement.
Also, wasn't her name translated to like loudmouth?
It was something like that. Yes, it was.
My God.
But it was just one after another. So what you saw last night was, civil rights movement, civil rights movement, civil rights movement. Same thing over and over and over again. Poor Jesse Jackson.
Oh, my God.
Oh,
dude.
that was...
He looked like Jimmy Carter. He's passed away 10 years ago.
Well,
that was rough.
That was the last time that the left had a moral high ground to stand on, and that's why they cling to that shit.
They cannot let it go.
Yeah, it's an industry
without it,
now.
They got nothing.
Yeah, it's an industry.
And then, by the way, since we're talking wheelchairs...
Go ahead.
You see the other guy?
Fire away.
I thought you were going to say Greg Abbott, but yeah.
Yeah. Who's your favorite wheelchair?
Well,
Stephen Hawking,
Did you see the guy that went out there with the woman?
Yeah, the guy had ALS, and he was like, look, I don't want to make fun of the guy, although it was kind of funny to me because I'm a piece of shit. Everything's funny to me. But he's like making weird noises and shit, and then she translates for him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, come on, that's not what
they
he
meant
said.
when they were working on the Obama campaign.
Like, come on, man.
It was
gross.
Gross.
It was exploitive, and it was really gross.
It was
honestly.
a weird night all the way around.
Fake.
And look,
it was fake.
Yes, because
from beginning to end, it was fake.
But to me, the reason why it was fake all the way around is everybody was trying to avoid the topic that you pushed your own candidate out the window to 45 days ago, and then we're all supposed to be happy now that the VP is running that nobody ever liked in the first place and never got one vote in the primary. So there was a lot of nervousness, and what is everybody going to say? And then the other part is...
Everyone was lying.
Right. Because the other part is, once she gets in, things are going to change. She's there.
Yeah.
So, you couldn't run off of that anymore, and it was very odd to me.
And here's even bigger than that, right? Everything you're saying is based on a lie. Everything. Like when you say that, Trump is going to get rid of contraception, that's a lie. So one after another, the reason there's no depth, I just had this conversation with someone. The reason there's no depth is that if you think about when you peel something away, peel the layers of it, you get down to the substance of it, right? If you want a substantive conversation, you need something to be able to stand up to scrutiny.
First principles, we would call it.
But when you tell a lie, it sits here, right? And you got to keep telling more lies to keep it up, and more lies and more lies. And what you saw is kind of the culmination of, I think, an entire strategy that is based on nonsense. Like, first of all, the Republicans, if they ever were, are no longer the party of we don't want black people around. What are you talking about? Like, I mean, we're in a death fight for survival. No one gives a continental shit about the color of your skin. And by the way, Hispanics, they're not so into the trans thing. And they're kind of Catholic. The whole no God thing, not sitting well with most Hispanics. Oh, and border security? Oh, no. Like, you can tell as many lies as you like, but you cannot change the fact that most of the Border Patrol in the state of Texas is Hispanic.
Yep.
You know, and those people know they don't want the cartels here. So when they see the cartels moving in, you can't lie about it. President of Guatemala is talking about more than 70% of the unaccompanied minors crossing the southern border are from his country, and his families and his parents want to know why you're taking his children. You cannot, like, you're either avoiding the conversation because you cannot win it. If you start a border conversation at the DNC, you're not going to look good. Right. There's no way to spin that. And then so what do they have to talk about? All I could think as I was watching it, it got more and more painful. I'm sorry. But then how many of Kamala's childhood friends are they going to roll out? How many?
Well, she's only got 2.
But
and
she'll call you
black.
on your birthday and she'll sing happy birthday.
Correct.
Sometimes.
And as that was going on, I'm watching it, and they told the same story that they pre-recorded in the commercial, and then that ran back to back. So the whole thing.
They're thin on material.
Yes.
Because it's based on lies, and they can't hide it any longer.
And it felt discombobulated, disingenuous, and then at the end of the night, and again, I'll go back to what I said towards the top of this, I actually felt bad for Biden, because then he had to go on close to midnight. All he did was scream directly into camera about things that weren't kind of real and everything else. There was a clip circulating, too, where he finally just lost his words for about 30 seconds and then found them, and then the audience just started cheering for nothing.
How many American citizens are in prison right now for exercising their First Amendment rights?
I can't even imagine how many.
I don't feel sorry for Biden.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay. I get in my phone on an almost daily basis photographs of more soldiers who we trained, who fought for American ideals, who have been tortured to death because of this administration. Okay. How many American families didn't have Christmas because they couldn't afford it? Okay. I do not feel sorry for Biden. How many thousands? Do you know that they've admitted to losing 85,000 unaccompanied minors?
Yeah.
From one calendar year. Do you know Texas DPS busted a sex trafficking ring? Women who were 6, 7, 8 months pregnant, having to come every day to a gas station and be raped by strangers to pay their debt to the cartel. I do not feel sorry for Joe Biden.
Well, so here's why I said that. Back when you were a journalist and everything was on the up and up.
What he just said?
What? I'm talking about out in the streets.
When you were a journalist?
Out in the streets on CB. I mean, really doing it.
So much trouble now. Give me some.
We'll get into it. Yeah, we'll get into it today.
I don't know. Hold on.
But
this
well,
guy.
that's Chuck Liddell. Don't throw him.
Yeah.
To be honest, when you started, because you've had an illustrious career, I appreciate that. You've had an illustrious career. When you started, we used to value the President of the United States as an office that was respectable.
Right.
We used to respect the office and everything else. If you made mistakes along the way, it happens. Bush wasn't fucking great.
I get it.
So we used to respect it. Now that went out the window. And I said this with the first impeachment of Trump, where I said, look, you start doing this bullshit, it's going to go all the way down the road, and you'll never stop it through the end of time.
I mean, that's what he said, too, by the way. When he got elected after talking about all that lock her up bullshit, he was like, you know what, we're not going to do that because that's a bad precedent to set.
It is. And so I think at a certain points, there's got to be some respectability brought back in to the President of the United States.
I think we might be beyond that.
Otherwise, it's just, I think so, too.
I think we might be beyond that. I think we might need to have a little fucking dust up.
Okay, so again, look at it as an intelligence operation and an information war. You can trace that exact thing you're talking about through movies. White House Down. Wag the dog.
I've been talking about this.
He's said it for years on the show.
For 10 years. Yeah. I think that Hollywood is an engine to program people's minds for shit that people are doing.
There's no doubt about it.
Like alien movies are teaching you like what the good aliens versus the bad aliens are. I think all that shit's true.
All of it. I mean, all of it is bullshit.
Yeah.
all of it is bullshit. I can tell you right now. If you actually go back to Eva von Braun's assistant and to what was said at the Nuremberg trials, the Nazis, many of them who were on trial, they said the war wasn't over. And they talked about, there's documented evidence of the Nazis looking at an alien invasion, a fake alien invasion, to unite the world and bring them under Nazi rule. That was discussed decades ago. And look what you just had happen over the weekend. There were all these reports of weird sightings, and people were mocking it. Yeah. So this is what you have.
Goebbels thought he was like a fucking amateur filmmaker or something, right? People.
Well, he was.
Yeah, he was. I guess.
Because people still believe that Hitler was a great orator, but we have no idea because they were making movies and they had a gun to your head. Yeah. And if you didn't, salute and cheer and do whatever you were supposed to do, then you were shot.
Yeah.
But as you were going along through this, because eventually you said, fuck it, and I'm out of here. I'm out of the mainstream media and everything else. What year did it change for you where everything turned and you said, oh, what I think that I'm reporting and what they're actually putting out there is two totally different things?
It didn't happen quite that way. What happened for me was I was chuffing along doing what I had always done. What I did under Bush, I did under Obama. And then I started to see that they loved it when I called Bush out for lying. They didn't like it when I called Obama out. That was no bueno. So before it was Washington Post, New York Times, Vogue magazine, Glamour Women of the Year, every award under the sun, Emmy after Emmy after Emmy, the DuPont Silver Baton, blah blah blah. But so I naturally assumed that was because people meant what they said about holding truth to power and and so on and so on. And then I did my Benghazi story, and that was in about 2013, I think. Was it 13? Yeah. And that was when I discovered, oh no, you're not actually supposed to tell the truth. You're not actually supposed to, I didn't consider politics.
Well, what's the story that you told? And then what's the story that they wanted you to tell?
Did a producer say, hey, you can't say this? Because that's usually how it happens.
No.
Okay.
That's sometimes how it happens, but it's much more insidious than that. Dinesh D'Souza explained it to me many years ago. There's accepted truths. Like one of the accepted truths across the American media is that Roe v. Wade is unassailable and a woman's right to have an abortion is the Holy Grail, and nobody can touch that. And if you report on anything about that, I mean, no one would even consider reporting it from a pro-life or an anti-abortion activist point of view, except to denigrate them, right? When they blow up an abortion clinic, it doesn't even enter the conversation because you have little soldiers who all share the same worldview. They don't even consider that any other opinion counts. And of course, we know better, right? Because we're the great unwashed, the masses, the audience is so dumb. If I had a nickel for every time I heard that, and you go along with it, but you don't really challenge it because you're so busy. I mean, in my case, I was so busy working my butt off. Plus, you're under siege internally, right? I mean, because if you want to do something different, you pay for that. Like I went to Baghdad, I stayed 5 years. They hated that because the other correspondents didn't want to spend that much time in the battlefield or couldn't. And so they get angry with you because you make them look bad. So then they figure ways to undermine you. And so you're fighting for your life, right? You're trying to do the best and you're fighting for your life. And you don't realize until what happened with me with Benghazi, I didn't even know about the guy that they ended up attacking and discrediting and using to destroy my reporting. I started doing that story because I got a tip-off from a contact in Delta. I know it's an unacknowledged organization, but nevertheless, I got a tip-off about two guys from that unit who were on the ground, who are the only reason we got Chris Stevens' body back. They're the only reason that anyone survived at the annex, that none of those guys were taken hostage. Because what they did is when they heard what was happening, they were on the ground for defense organizations.
Sure.
Okay? And they immediately started collecting money. They went around to everybody in the embassy in Tripoli. They got money. They hired a plane. They went down. They hooked up with a local militia that they knew because that's how these guys operate. Yeah. And they got them to retrieve Stevens' body from the hospital because they found out that it was there. And they then fought their way into the annex and they rescued those guys. And they brought out, Glenn and Ty's bodies, right? And so those two guys, they were awarded the Navy Cross because one guy had never changed his branch of service when he went in as Navy, even though you're supposed to, and the other one was the medal below the Medal of Honor. They would have been
Glenn Doherty.
No. The two Delta guys.
These two Delta guys.
Operators,
now,
yeah.
I found out that they were getting those medals. They should have gotten the Medal of Honor, right? But they
but then you got to make it public.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what happened. So my thing, I began by asking General Tovo, can I interview these guys? Can I tell their story? And later, 6 months into our investigation, we got contacted. I can't tell you how many people who were writing BS propaganda books from the Media Matters kind of people were trying to infiltrate and affect our reporting. We eventually got this British guy. He came to the CBS office they have an office that just deals with books and movies and whatever, and that is the guy that they used to discredit our story. And what they did was they removed the story, any sign of it, online, so that nobody could watch it for themselves and see how 99% of what they were saying was a lie, was totally inaccurate. And this guy, because he told his boss, he was living outside. He was a security contractor for the perimeter security at the Special Mission Compound. So they were not armed, they weren't allowed any weapons. And he built up relationships with the RSOs at that site, one of whom was very badly injured and almost died. But when he heard that they were under attack, he tried to get near the compound. He couldn't get near. So in his story, he goes back later that night. He climbs the wall. He can't see any Americans. One guy recognizes him at one point. He hides in a dog kennel. And, he gets out of there. And the next day, his boss tells him he's got to leave. So he books him a ticket. And the next day, on his way to the airport, he stops there. He takes all the photographs that, by the way, you remember the FBI took several weeks to get there? Mm-hmm. So they were using those photographs, their only evidence and eyewitness accounts. I saw emails between him and FBI agents and the agency and the State Department, stuff that we couldn't show because some of these agents were working undercover, and we got yelled at and told we couldn't show this stuff. But they used him because he told his boss. He said, I lied to my boss. He told me not to go back. I went back that night, and I didn't do anything because it was pretty much over at that point. But they produced an after action report that they said he wrote, which he said he'd never seen in his life before, which if it was real, it would have been a classified document. But basically they focused on this guy, and I'll tell you why. Because we had the deputy ambassador, Greg Hicks, who had testified before Congress, but when he sat with me on that 60-minute set, and he said, Chris Stevens called me. It was the last phone call that Stevens made before he died. He told me we wanted a terrorist attack. And he said, we knew from the first moment, and that's what we reported up, right? And he said about 10 minutes in, I looked at the defense attaché, who is always or usually the top spy in any embassy, and I said to him, and he looked at me and he said, I'm sorry, Greg, the cavalry ain't coming. And that decision never changed. And he said, I felt sick in the pit of my stomach because every single one of us who goes out on the end of the line for our country, we believe this nation has our back. And in that moment, I knew they didn't. And I looked at him and I said, we better tell the boys at the annex. And of course, 2 of those boys died, okay? 2 heroic boys, by the way, who both had great histories. And I mean, gosh, I think Glenn Middleton, that guy had more best friends than anyone I've ever met, right? I mean, 2 people who were loved. And that is what they didn't want out there. Now that only, that became our story because we told the story of the 2 Delta guys, but we couldn't get access to them. We couldn't interview them because everybody was on lockdown. So we did an extraordinary amount of reporting. We even photocopied the stamps in the passport of this guy when he said he went out there. We verified his employment with the State Department. We verified his military record. They put that we did sloppy reporting. That's not true, because either way they had it set up that if he went with the version that was in the fake after action report that they created, then they would say that one thing. And if we went with the version where he told us what he really did, then they would say he was a liar. because he lied to his boss, and you put a known liar on TV. It's like, come on, you haven't stopped for a Starbucks and told your boss that the traffic was bad. Give me a break, right? It was that kind of thing. So I learned some very good lessons. I learned there are entire organizations that have budgets of millions of dollars who are dedicated to making sure that people like me get destroyed because we can't be controlled. I'm not going to sell you a narrative. I'm going to tell you the truth to the best of my ability. Maybe I'll get some things wrong. If I do, I'll own it. But you're never going to own me. Because the other thing they do, I learned about their tactics. Like when they have you in the dirt on your back and their foot is on your throat, what do? They reach down and they offer you a hand. Mm-hmm. Who took the hand? You can see who took the hand. McChrystal took the hand because he came back.
Yep.
And they love him. And they stopped attacking him.
That was the biggest embarrassment.
Petraeus took the hand.
Shit, those are the two biggest embarrassments from generals I think I've ever seen.
Well, how about Milley?
Yeah, but he never publicly embarrassed himself the way they did.
But he allowed Trump on his watch to go down.
Yeah.
I mean, every single one of those people who had a clearance.
He's a piece of shit. There's no question about that.
Without a doubt.
We hate Milley on this show. No doubt.
But those two guys, one embarrassed Obama in Rolling Stone, which is that's Democratic headquarters is Rolling Stone, right?
Of course.
Yeah. And the other guy couldn't keep his fucking dick in his pants and classified materials away.
And that's the best version.
Yeah.
That's the best version of those two.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got people like that. So who didn't take the hand? Flynn. Mm-hmm. You can see it, right? Mm-hmm. Once you know their tactics, it's really not hard. Because it's like, how do you know that Trump is not on their side? Because of the amount of time and effort and money that they have put into destroying him. Mm. That's how you know. So do I know for certain everything? No, of course not. That's impossible. I have to be conscious of what is unknowable. But what do I know? I learned the tactics. I learn how they operate. And I remember all the time we're in the midst of an intelligence operation.
How long after Benghazi, forgive me for interrupting you, how long after Benghazi were you fired then?
I was never fired.
Okay, you were not?
No.
You left on your own?
No. They don't have to do that because you have a contract. So when my first contract came up after Benghazi, they renewed it. And then when that contract came up, they just didn't renew it, which is effectively being fired.
It is. And what was the reasoning given to you and your agent?
They don't have to give you a reason.
They didn't? Nothing at all?
No.
Because you'd been there for years.
16 years.
I know.
Yeah.
So there was no champagne, there was no gift bag, thank you for your time.
No, but you know what they did give me? Medical for life. Because when I was gang raped and sodomized and beaten almost to death while I was working for 60 Minutes in Egypt, they had to, although they publicly stopped standing by me and threw me to the dogs, they knew that when the rubber met the road, they had a legal obligation they could not escape. So I have medical for life.
Gotcha. And then since you brought it up, obviously, with Egypt, we saw video. We saw you being led away. We saw you being torn in a bunch of different directions over there. How did that affect you and shape the rest of your life after that?
Everything affects you, but I will say, I don't know why. I think I know why, actually, but I have a lot of peace about what happened to me. I was always at peace with it. I understood, because I had seen it many times in my life, that bad things happen to good people. I have a really strong sense of self, right? Because I just mean in the sense of I know who I am, I know where I fit in the world, and I know what I stand for. And so it wasn't hard for me to recognize that this was about them and the situation, and it wasn't about me. And honestly, when you're that close to death, okay, and they have stripped everything from you. I mean, they've stripped your clothes, they've stripped your dignity, they have really pissed all over you. And it's filthy death, right? I mean, there's nothing clean about this. I mean, they're tearing at every part of your body, even inside your body. Like, you're reduced to nothing at that point. And so, for me, it was very simple. In that moment, when I accepted that I had no ability to affect the outcome of the situation anymore, I was going to die. I was dying. And it was a miserable, worthless, filthy death. I had one moment when I lost hold of my security guard, where I felt the strength leave my body and all the adrenaline with it, because I accepted that reality. And then I felt guilt because my daughter was 1 and my son was, actually my daughter was 10 months old and my son was 1. And I thought, wow, what kind of a mother are you? Like, your children deserve more than that. They deserve better. And so in that moment, I said, okay, so I'm going to die fighting. And I scratched and I bit and I did everything I could to pull DNA just to fight back, so that when this story was told of my death, my children would be told that I died fighting. So, you know, I have a lot of peace over who I am. And when I've been tested, that stood up. And I feel like God really protected me in that moment, because he tore me down to nothing. And he let me be torn down to nothing, and he showed the world. He let me show the world who I really was. And so now, no matter what they try to say about me, as many lies as they tell, all the power and the influence and the information dominance and all the things they have, you can't take away the truth. And so people really, they kind of know. You know, there are people that hate me because whatever they think, they say, you know, the same old line is repeated all the time. She used to be great, now she's, you know, crazy far right or whatever. But it just doesn't stick, because it's not true. And I feel like that, you know, I was so grateful that my children were not going to grow up without a mother, that I didn't want to waste one moment of that life that had been given back to me. I didn't want to waste one moment on it, on being bitter or angry. I never thought about those men. They don't live with me. They don't own any part of my life. They're nothing to me. So, and that wasn't a hard decision to make. I don't want to sit here around. That's not noble. It wasn't hard for me, because I never felt it. And I will tell you, growing up in South Africa, there was a South African woman who was raped by 2 men who slit her open, gutted her, and then slit her throat and threw her out of the car on it late at night in the middle of nowhere. And this woman, her name is Alison Botha, she wrote a book about it. It was a very thin, easy read. And I never forget, as a young journalist covering Alison's story at the trial, the judge said to her, you know, how can you be so strong? Because this is a woman who, when they threw her out to die, she felt around in the dark, found her denim shirt, then she found her entrails. She held them in with one hand with her shirt. She packaged them up. And then with the other, she said she was trying to move. And there's thorns and stones, and this is South Africa. It's a lot like Texas, right? And she couldn't understand why her body was trying to go one way, but the world was another way. And then she realized her head was looking back. So she reached back with her other hand and pulled her head down and crawled like that until she got to the road, and she had lost so much blood, she had no strength left. She lay across that road, and the first car went around her, and the second car stopped. It was a young veterinarian. And this guy, he just put his hand in her throat and held onto her jugular and called for an ambulance. And she, on her way into the ER that night, gave them a description of the men who did this to her. And they were arrested the following morning in their apartment, where they were eating, using the knife with her dried blood on it. So that when the judge says to her, you know, how can you be so strong and so calm? And she said on the stand, they took so much from me that night. Why would I give them the rest of my life as well? And that's how I've lived. They took more from me that night than they deserved, but they don't get any more than I give them. So it's been a process over the years. You know, it helps having a husband who was well-trained in this kind of thing, so he understands that world and how these things can happen. But he's also a drinking pro, right? So he's like, 2 weeks later, he's like, okay, so you're done? Like, can we get back to business?
Grieving's up, yeah.
Are we done yet? Like, are you going to torture me for much longer? And I'm like, oh yeah, because this is all about you.
Sure.
And your needs. And then we had a good laugh. And, you know, and we kind of got back to life. So I just feel like by the time it happened to me, I had been given a lot in my life. I had family who loved me. I've been loved all my life. My mother and father loved me. I have sure, I've struggled and I've worked hard, but I've been rewarded for that. You know what I mean? Like, I've been all over the world, and I've been honored by the Queen, and I've done a lot of things. Slept on the streets with street kids in Angola during the war there, or after the war. I've seen the world, and I have had I spent months with Navy SEALs hunting high-value targets in southern Afghanistan. I skipped all the training, and I got to have all a front row seat to history over and over again. And so I feel like God has rewarded me with so much. Like, how could I waste a moment of that?
It's got to make you feel some kind of way, though, to see the same kind of men that you had to deal with there flooding into Europe, flooding into the United States, from prisons in Central America in our country, and then in Europe, it's primarily African migrants, right, who are just showing up to places like Sweden, who are now trying to bribe the migrants to go back home, and the rape statistics are going through the roof, right? And it's like, how many times are we going to have to be taught this lesson, that there are parts of other people's culture that are incompatible with organized, civilized society?
Well, I'll be honest, Chinese society is incompatible with our society, right? And we gravitate towards our own. I don't feel like what happened to me could only have happened in a Middle Eastern country and couldn't have happened in the U.S.
Sure, yeah.
I know that's not true. That kind of thing happens all over the place. What makes me angry is if you've got police officers and public servants and media who are telling you can't talk about being raped. You cannot be honest about this problem because we don't want it. I look at the dark heart of pure evil of those people, right? They know human nature, right? I bet you our intelligence operatives are trained in saying exactly the right thing, just like the Mukhabarat in that crowd knew exactly what to say to light that fire and start a mob rape. They knew exactly how to do it. These are tactics that are used by our own intelligence agencies. They all know how to do this. They know how to play to the best and the worst of human nature. So those are the people that I really hold responsible. They're the ones who are orchestrating a planned and intentional invasion of Europe, the U.S., and so on, right? You go back to the United Nations 2018 Global Compact on Migration. That's the policy we're living. And
it's wild. I mean, the EU is required to, each member country is required to take in 150,000 illegal immigrants a year, refugees they call them, but it is what it is, right? And finally, Hungary said no. And now he's a far right terrorist now. He's a far right terrorist Putin supporter now because he doesn't want illegal immigrants in his country.
So how do you know who's standing up to the global cult? They have information dominance worldwide. They have Instagram, Facebook, blah, 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 right? They have information dominance worldwide, with the exception of X, because Elon carved that out. So how do you know who's on their team and who's not?
Who's the terrorist?
Putin's not, because they're going after him. Viktor Orban, Milei in Argentina, Bukele in El Salvador, right? I mean, this guy, they pray in his cabinet meetings. He's definitely not on the side of the global cult, because that's a godless cult.
Yeah. Well, what did you want to say? You say the global cult. He asks me all the time, who is this and why are they doing all this stuff? I mean, to me, it's just all about control, right? That's a very easy way to put it, but I'd like to hear some more in detail thoughts from you. I can
answer that. Do you want to ask before we get too far from where we were, do you want to ask what
Not
you were
at all.
say?
Just to cap it off, I thought I was watching you die on live television back in the day. And I personally had never seen anything like it in my entire life. And the fact that you walked into the studio, were completely affable and normal and everything else was shocking to me, to be honest with you, because you don't know how that's going to affect each individual and if they'll be able to go out in public and talk about it and everything else. And I was like, I wonder if I can ask her about that today. Because to this day, on live TV, I haven't seen someone that close to death unless, it was a soldier or somebody else that they immediately cut away from. They immediately cut away from you at that point. And it was always a question that I'd wondered if you were to ever walk into the studio. So thank you for answering it, and thank you for answering it so bravely, because a lot of people don't look at that the same way.
So this was my gift from God. right? That God gave me a real sense. I always had the most profound sense of right and wrong. I cannot bear injustice or human suffering. It's not a question for me. I know that perfectly. And when that happened to me, I had absolute certainty that I was not going to carry this in secret. This was not going to be my shame, my burden. This is not my burden. You know, you did this to me, and it's going to be on you.
Yeah.
It's not. And what I realized when they came, because you know I was naked. Finally, when I was dragged into a part of the square where there were women and children, and these Egyptian men got up to protect their women and children, by the way, you know, and me by default, but they formed a ring around their women and children because this mob was insane, and they're baying for blood. And so at that point, one of my security guy who I had been torn off me, Ray Jackson, our security guy, he was the reason. He forced them to come and get me. He forced those soldiers to fight their way through the mob. They had batons. They were beating people as they came through. They fought their way to get to me, but when they saw this little rabid animal that was, because I couldn't breathe at that point, they were pouring water on me, and people were throwing things at me because I was naked, you know, and when they saw me naked, they wouldn't touch me. And that was actually one of the worst moments for me, because I had accepted my death and I was fighting for that fighting for something in the end. But they were that far from me. They weren't even as far as that television. So that was when, once the breath came back into my lungs and I realized I had a chance, then the fear came. And that was a fear like I've never experienced, ever since and ever before. You can't even recreate it. It's a terror. Real terror is just an awful thing. It will tear your body into pieces, you know, and I just knew they could reach right through those young boys that were standing there, and they could drag me right back. And I couldn't do that. I could not. In that moment, I could not go back. I did not want to go back. And so I was screaming, you know, but they didn't understand. And so when those soldiers appeared, I was, you know, all I wanted to do was cling to them, and they wouldn't touch me. They disappeared, and that's when I was really screaming. And so when they came back, they had an abaya, that black robe, and they put that over me first, and then they picked me up. So that robe, it was like being erased in that moment. Like when they got to the edge of that square, our Egyptian driver came up, and I barely knew the guy. I had worked with him for a week before. They beat the living shit out of him when they put us in prison the week before. And he had shown up on the first night. He said, "I want to work for you again." I said, "Are you kidding me? Like, they almost killed you." And he said, "No, this is my revolution. I want to work." So
this is during the Arab Spring, by the way, for context.
Yeah. So they put me in his arms, and he carried me up on a side street, and there was my team. And nobody knew what happened because they couldn't see. And when you wear that robe, and you're not bleeding from anywhere, your leg's not blown off, you haven't been shot, nobody knows what happened to you. And so they don't know how to help you.
And for us at home, we thought you were dead. So I just assumed, I was like, all right, this is going to be one of the most horrific deaths that we've ever seen. And again, at the time, so beloved you were on our television every single night and everything else. And I'd never seen anything like it, and it always stuck with me. So if you got here, that's why I wanted to ask.
No, it's in some ways it's a gift because I've had a lot of mothers and fathers reach out to me. I've had a lot of men reach out to me about being raped and never being able to talk about it. I have thousands of letters at home, thousands, and many thousands are from men.
Well, it's happening more and more, as Dan was saying, back to Dan's points, especially in a lot of these countries with illegal immigration and all that other stuff. How do we actually change it?
This is a weapon of war. It's not happening because bad people are coming into a society and they're just being bad. It's happening. It's being used as a weapon of war. Because we
knew, by the way, and I pointed this out on some stuff we ran last week. But that shit Trump said in 2017 about them emptying their prisons into America, that was absolutely true. 100%. We have intelligence reports that say they were doing that. And then you look 3 months later, 6 months later, and you see the crime rate in El Salvador, for example, which was the murder capital of the world. Their murder rate dropped to 22-year lows. It dropped by 80% overnight. And all of a sudden, there's a bunch of El Salvadoran gangs in America, and their crime rate goes down. So it's like, to your point about that, it isn't just incompetence. Right? They didn't just open the border and some bad people came in, because that's what the El Salvador guy should do. Either kill them or fucking get them out of this country. That makes sense from his perspective, right? From our perspective, we allowed those people to come here. Right? When I say we, I mean...
Not just allowed it, we facilitated it.
We facilitated it, yeah, 100%.
And paid for it.
Like remember the Catholic Church is involved in this shit. They've been fucking funding people, giving them $2,500 checks. And cell phones and shit. It's like a very broad conspiracy that's going on.
Well, I don't know about all the churches, but many different churches.
Yeah. It's a very broad conspiracy that's happening right in front of our eyes. We've been talking about this shit for years.
And look at Venezuela. Here's another layer to it, right? You say they emptied the prisons, which Maduro was honest about. But what people don't understand is that wasn't just opening the doors, letting criminals come. They built the cartel Tren de Aragua. They built that inside the prison system. They created a cartel out of convicted criminals.
And now there's 1,200
and that cartel
operating here in
is now in the United States. And that's the cartel that leaked document that the FBI verified, where they've given orders to their people to attack U.S. law enforcement. That's the cartel that's taken over the buildings in Colorado. That's the cartel that has been moving into Miami for the last few years. So, and that's the cartel that's working hand in hand with the Mexican cartels, right? And hand in hand with who? The CCP. Yeah. So that's what you call asymmetric warfare.
Back up just a second. When you say CCP, she's talking about fentanyl coming from China, going into the cartels and then coming into America.
Yeah, because
where 85 to 100,000 Americans are dying of overdoses per year now, right? They're killing 80.
More. It's over 100,000.
I know it is. I'm just saying the verifiable stuff that we have data on right now from the last 3 years. At a minimum, it's 85. Let's just say at 100,000 for round number 6.
Last calendar year was 107,000.
Yeah,
They're official figures from the CDC.
Yeah, so if any other type of attack of any sort were conducted by foreign adversaries that killed 100,000 fucking people, we would nuke that country. Like, for real. If they dropped conventional weapons on the eastern seaboard and killed 100,000 people, we would nuke Beijing immediately.
That's right. So, but look, the Venezuelan government is allied with who? China, Iran, etc., all of America's enemies. And what have they done? They've created a cartel. These cartels are working together. People don't realize, they say, well, China is responsible for fentanyl. Yes, but China, they got the analogs for fentanyl from who?
Afghanistan.
From American pharmaceutical companies. Because fentanyl was created in the 1960s by a Belgian pharmacist. It is a hospital drug. It's still used in hospitals.
What are the precursors? I don't even know what it's.
My wife, actually, they gave it to my wife during our last child.
Right, yes. There you go. Yep. Because what do you get? You get a very quick high and you get a very quick down. And for surgery, they want you out for the surgery and they want you back. So that's what it was. The precursor chemicals are the ones that you actually, those are the compounds that make up fentanyl. So what did we do? We were sold a lie on globalization, supposed to make everything cheaper and raise the standard of living for the world and bring jobs. Bullshit. All it did was make very few people much richer and everyone else poorer. But what did we do? We farmed out all of our manufacturing capability to China. The CCP puts people in every single organization, every company that comes into their country. They have their spies. They take all of your intellectual property. They figured out, fentanyl. That will work. And they introduced it as a street drug in 2011, 2012 through mail order with just a few grains. But then they farmed out that capability to the Mexican cartel. So DEA and HSI and all these organizations, they're doing busts in Mexico. And what are they finding? Chinese pharmacists in a facility in Sinaloa or wherever it happened to be. So the Chinese they're conducting drug warfare. Because if you go back in time, they are the people who know that. That's how they lost Taiwan to the British, right? When the British introduced Indian opium to China, and the Chinese were used to Chinese opium, that was a manageable problem. It became an unmanageable problem.
It even followed the Chinese here to America, the Southern California, even Northern California to some degree, but during the railroad construction, it became a big problem for them. A huge problem for them, yeah. It's been going on for... What's that, 160 years?
Yeah, and they know what drug warfare is. They know what asymmetric and unrestricted warfare is. So that's what they're doing, and the cartels are their army.
Throw me that hard AF right there in front of you.
This
the next
one?
Yeah. Go.
Okay.
Chuck it over here.
Not as hard as you did before.
There
Jesus.
you go.
Yeah, well, I was trying to hit him
Either
before.
way.
I was trying to hit him before.
I'm real dodgy because I got a ton of questions for you here today. Now we're going for it. We're going for it today. Don't worry about it. How do we change all of this?
Well, wait. Back up. Just
You want
a
to
sec.
go back to your question?
Yeah, I want you to go through the paces of who it is exactly that constitutes this globalist cabal of people. Because I'm not like the idea of a bunch of dudes around a round table in a smoky room. That's just not what it is, right? It's never going to be something like that. But there are like wink and nod deals. There's a lot of weird shit that goes on behind the scenes, collaboration between people who want to have control over things, right?
And then, by the way, that's what I meant. How do we change all this? So with this invisible group that's behind the scenes, how do we break that up and change all of it? Because on this show, we've talked about it, and it's more on the higher ups. There's not a club. There's not a membership you show to get into it. Who is it, and then how do we change it? And how do we get back to some form of normalcy?
So there's layers to everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you know. And there's a lot of stuff that you can read on the internet. People will talk about the Bilderberg group and, the Monaco group and,
Trilateral,
and all the rest of it. And certainly there's a lot there that you can try to make sense of. Very hard to verify or vet any of it. So what do I do as a journalist? I go to first-hand sources wherever I can, right? So one of the first-hand sources that I know extremely well, and I've talked about before, is someone who was trained and paid by the U.S. government to infiltrate what he calls the global cult. And that's why I started calling it the global cult, because I started to realize and understand when I interrogate him, which I regularly do, he has helped me do one of the first things I think is important for every journalist is you put yourself in their shoes and you look at it through their eyes. So like, what did I learn about Al-Qaeda? I learned from them, right? I listen to what they say. I let that be my first guide. And so one of the things that he was tasked with doing was infiltrating the global cult at the UN level. So there's different levels to the cult. His faction was the Islamist faction, which was particularly striking to me because I'm a child of 9/11. I watched it happen, spent the next 15 years on those battlefields. And so, I know what that fight looks like up close. And in theory, what do you mean Islamist faction? Aren't we at war with, isn't Islam competing? Oh, wait. It makes so much sense. It is a global cult. Start to look back in time. Look at the alliances between the Nazis and the Islamists, right? The Mufti of Jerusalem who was given honorary Aryan status by Hitler, and so on, right? Of course these people are working together because it is truly a global cult.
Well, it's hard to break somebody's belief system, and especially in religion. That's my thought on it, where...
So that's the key point.
Yes.
Religion.
Yep.
That's the key point, because he said if you read their texts and you read how it is framed, everything is framed in terms of spiritual warfare. So whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God, whether you practice your religion or not, they believe in the devil, and that's who they serve. So you can look at that, and a lot of people are very secular, and they're like, "Oh, listen to these crazy people talk," right? But I'm listening from he's explaining it to me. So what happened when this country was founded? It was before the Illuminati was formally founded as an organization. But
Are you saying it is? So you're saying there is an Illuminati?
I'm telling you what he told me.
Okay.
Okay? And in fact, that's well documented, right? It was founded in Bavaria in 1776, a few months after the U.S.
I thought it was Jay-Z and Kanye. I didn't know. I'm doing my best here.
Is he fucking with me?
Miss Logan. I'm doing my best.
Look at his stupid face. You can tell he's fucking with you.
Jay-Z and Kanye.
Okay, wait.
And
Don't
maybe
throw hard
Beyonce.
stuff. We got to keep doing
what
the
is
show.
this?
Yeah,
That's
we get a long
nicotine.
show. We might start throwing stuff. I thought it was maybe Beyonce. in it.
well-
No, she's from Texas, though. She wouldn't be involved.
That's
in
true.
anything.
BK is from Texas.
Oh, so no one from Texas is involved? What about Johnson? Talk about stealing votes.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Johnson stole that election.
LBJ?
Everyone in Texas knows that. In
He had a big
Texas,
dick,
right?
though, so you got away with it.
Yeah,
I don't know about
What do you
that.
call it? What do you call it?
I don't know
Jumbo or
about
some
that.
shit?
Jumbo.
Jumbo.
I don't
Jumbo.
wanna know
Jumbo
about
was the
that.
name of his penis. by
Called
the
his,
way.
he called his
I
dick
definitely
Jumbo.
don't want to know about that.
Well, now you know.
Okay,
about
I
wait.
it.
didn't want to either.
I'm gonna text you this for the next 2-3 weeks in a row, just so you don't forget.
Hey, what's up? It's Jumbo.
Okay, so, all right, putting that aside, this
Talking about Jumbo?
this is a very serious person who spent 2.5 years underground. Okay, who's read their texts and read their ancient books and read their manuals, who sat in depopulation meetings at the UN. I'm going to say that again. Who sat in these meetings? This is his story. He had to go through 2 security clearances. He needed 2 separate security clearances just to sit in that meeting. And his description of it to me was, they're talking about how many people they need to get rid of and how they need to reduce the population by this amount. And he's looking around the room and he's thinking, am I the only one here who thinks that these people are batshit crazy? And one guy stands up and he says, no, you've got it all wrong. And he says, phew, right, this guy's going to talk some sense. And he says, no, 70-80% isn't enough. We need to reduce the population by 90%. He says, these are the kind of lunatics that he was surrounded by. So is it real? Was I in that meeting? Can I verify everything he says? This is someone who, many things he said to me have stood the test of time. I do believe him, and I have vetted him to the best of my ability, but some things are beyond my reach. So according to him, if you look back in the history, when the United States was founded and people came here from overseas, right, the Illumins at the time, who were part of the elite society that were in control of Europe, did not think much of the American experiment. And they didn't really take it seriously. When the crown was defeated, that is when you start to see in their texts great concern. So what they did was they tasked their scholars with understanding how this happened. What they used as a guide was the letters of the 13 colonies. Because if you read the letters of the 13 colonies, that shows you the foundation of the resistance in the U.S., which was the congregations of the churches. So over the next 100 years, they tried to infiltrate the churches, but they were unsuccessful in any meaningful way. It didn't work. So what did they turn their attention to? The seminaries. So I have literally sat with pastors who talk about participating in pagan ceremonies inside the ceremony. So paganism does not believe in God. So you're a pastor, but you're having pagan rituals inside a seminary that is training priests.
Which is very odd. Like pagan rituals very often are sexual in nature, right?
Very often.
It's
yes.
like even the stuff that we've borrowed in the West, like the wreath at Christmas, that's a womb, right? And the tree is a dick. Like that's kind of how all their stuff is set up, is like Mother Earth versus.
Yeah, well, look at the green movement today. You can find there are people out there who have sex with trees. Look it up online. It's all over the.
Well, hey, don't knock it.
Yeah, Boo Radley had a good time doing it.
No, he fell out of one and broke.
Was that what it was?
He broke his arm.
That's
He didn't-
definitely
he wasn't-
outside of my
He wasn't
lane.
fucking the tree.
Oh no, that's
not what he busted.
That's To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
You're saying he busted something else?
In that
yeah,
tree.
I didn't think it was the army busted.
Yeah, and it might be true, but for us, by the way, on this show,
Yes.
we look at it.
If we can pull up
as-
some tree porn, that would be good.
Well, don't
first
tell
idea,
Bob
don't
that, because
tell
he'll be.
Bob that.
We don't
I
have
just
time
don't
for
want
that
people
shit.
to think that I'm making it up.
Yeah,
There's a kink
Look,
for everything.
We're all aware dendrophilia is real, okay? It's a real thing.
Why did you
See,
even know that
they-
fucking word,
Yeah.
dude?
That's what
Yeah.
it is. It's dendrophilia.
But why would he know that word? I
He had sex with a cymbal.
get him out of here. We need to check.
Christmas
Did we
tree.
run a background check on this asshole?
No,
just-
we haven't
we're
run a background
smart.
check on anybody.
We're
yeah.
too
Oh yeah,
smart,
that's it, Delco. You guys are just smart. Delco is smart.
Too
Fuck outta
smart.
here.
No, but what Dan and I have said on the show for years is take Muslim and Islam as a religion. I think it's always been the long game with them. It's always the belief system, and then
So they'll tell you it's not a religion. You know what it is?
what is it?
It's a civilization.
Okay.
So
Global caliphate, man.
So understanding it in those terms helps you understand what they're doing. But the way I look at it now is that Islam is a control mechanism. Just like socialism, Marxism, these are control mechanisms. So when you think about the fact that it's a global cult, and they have these factions all work together, right? They're screwing over their people just as much as we're getting screwed.
It's like the Matrix.
It's really no different.
Like even the prophecy is another form of control, right?
Because what they've discovered, look what Saddam Hussein discovered. 1980 to 88, 8 years of war with Iran, more than 1 million Iranians died. What happened to the mullahs? Nothing. because they sent people into battle to fight for God. Saddam Hussein never started carrying around a Quran until the end of that war.
Yeah.
Because
He wasn't even religious, and here's how you know. He
That's it.
tried to have a Quran transcribed in his own fucking blood. And that is disgusting to a Muslim. They would never do that. That's how you know he wasn't even really Muslim. It had nothing to do with that shit.
Well, in Iraq, they always say that you have two kinds of Muslims. You have Chinese Muslims and Japanese Muslims. The Chinese ones are fake. So Saddam was a Chinese Muslim. That's what an Iraqi told me.
So how do you break the cycle?
Well, if it's a spiritual battle, if everything they do is designed to have a victory against God, first and foremost, we can't do it on our own. At the end of the day, it comes down to a war, right, of the spirit world. I mean, this is God's war. But we have free will for a reason. If we always choose the devil, if we never choose God, then we're not worth saving. So whenever I get frustrated, because I think, okay, there's a lot to have been frustrated about, especially in the last 10 years. But so if you look at it and you think, I can't fix this, right? We're too small. Like, how do we overcome this? Well, that's when God's telling you, you're not supposed to. I got this, right? So to me, that's how I see it. At a certain point, it's not going to be up to us. But if you don't fight for God, if you don't stand for God and fight for those principles and values, then we don't stand a chance.
Yeah, but I'd much rather shoot somebody in their fucking face.
Well, that's part of it, right? Because Archangel Michael, was a warrior for God.
Or Abaddon. Abaddon is the angel of death. Nobody knows about this guy because nobody studies Hebrew anymore.
At a certain point, you may be in battle.
What do you mean when you say the word God? Because not everybody feels the same way about that word.
Yeah, is it a certain religion for you, or is it a spiritual element?
No, it's not a certain religion. Those are kind of traps, right, that they set for us, that, so now you think your religion's better than someone else's religion. I don't care. Like, I have learned to focus on what I can actually focus on. Like, so I believe that the temple of the soul, right, this is between you and God. That's it. Everything else, is we can argue about till the cows come home. Mm-hmm. Right? It's subjective and it's one person's interpretation. But I just know that we didn't create ourselves.
No, and that's fine. But I just look at all these wars, and you've covered many of them. Mm-hmm. It's always over religion,
So, and
well, is it though?
okay,
is it, or is it just that's the fucking bait?
That's what they use. That's what they use, right? Because they know that it's much more powerful to motivate men with a spiritual cause that's greater than them than it is of the orders of another man.
Which is nothing new, by the way. I mean, Henry V giving that speech on St. Crispin's Day, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's like that war was over your sovereignty over the country, dude. That had nothing to do with peasants. They don't give a fuck.
Sure.
So that guy I told you about who infiltrated the global cult, he told me that the Dead Sea Scrolls were read to him in Aramaic and translated directly. And where we have on the Ten Commandments where it says, thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain, he said that's not what it says. What it actually says is, thou shalt not commit evil in the name of the Lord, which makes a lot more sense. Right?
I mean, to me, that's...
And what has been done by man is much evil has been committed in the name of, God or Allah or whoever it happens to be. Mm-hmm. So I understand that's how people get repulsed by that, right? And they're like, I don't want to be part of that. But at the end of the day, you have to decide what you believe in. I can't sit here and tell you what you believe in. After my 53 years on this earth, going to all these places I've gone to and experiencing all these things and seeing people, this is where I have come to. Like, I laugh at myself because I was so angry with God for so many years. Like, because suffering is what I was drawn to, right? Because I believe that if people knew the truth, they would do the right thing and they'd make it stop. And that I still believe that, actually. But what I've realized over the years is that when you have free will, that principle is absolute. Like, you can't intervene and change someone's free will, because then it's not free will.
Then how did you report on all these different countries all over the world, knowing that going in, where you're talking to people who have clearly been brainwashed and meant to believe whatever it is their government or their president or whoever told them? How did you cover it in a fair and just way all of those years, knowing what you know?
That's not hard. You just have an open heart and an open mind. I mean, principles like respect. I respect people. So how do I show them respect? I listen to what they have to say. I'm honest with them, right? Like I would tell my guys in Afghanistan every day, I was like, hey boys, it's ban your burqa day. Did you burn your wife's burqa this morning? And they would all laugh at me. You know, when one of my really close friends asked me to his wedding, I was like, is this going to be one of those messed up actually, I said, one of those fucked up Afghan weddings where you got all the men in one room and all the women in another room?
Yeah.
And you want me to play along? And he said, yes. And we laughed. And I was like, fuck you, Muhammad.
Yes.
You know, I'm not doing that. And he's like, oh, but for me, you know? I mean, if you show people respect, I try to understand where does this come from? What place does it occupy in your life and in your culture and in your society? So that's my job, right? My job is to learn, and then I have to make sense of it all, and I have some basic rules to follow of journalism. I call them the 10 Commandments of real journalism. I mean, I know those are out the window for 90% of the world right now, but they do exist. And I do remember them. So, you know, your first-hand sources are better than second, third, fourth. How did I know the Christopher Steele dossier was bullshit from the start? Because you didn't have a single first-hand source.
Fastball.
Or
remember that guy?
second-hand source. Or third-hand. I mean, you're literally... So it had nothing to do with Trump. If that document had been about Biden or Bush or Clinton or whoever, I would have said the same thing. This is bullshit. Because they don't have a single valid source in this. So it's a very simple rule. So I just feel like I've been guided. I just trusted my instincts. And if you treat people with human decency, you know, and I listen, even when I sat with a chief Taliban bomb maker who specialized in recruiting children to kill themselves, I listened to what he had to say. And I gave him a fair hearing. And, you know, I pushed back where I needed to push back, and I did my homework. So when he said, you know, when I could say to him, well, are you willing to let your sons? Because I knew he had sons. What about your children? You going to give them up? I mean, he said, sure.
I mean, you see that too. Parents like celebrating when their kids get martyred. Like, what the fuck kind of culture is that?
Well, and that's when I realized they tell you we're all the same all over the world, and that I saw that happen many times.
Yeah, we are not the same, brother.
And I'm like, no, I'm not the same as that. I'm not going to give you my child to go kill himself for a cause. I don't believe in that.
Back to your point about information sources, by the way, and this never gets enough attention. I said fastball, I meant curveball. Remember curveball? The single source
from
WMD in Iraq.
Oh.
There was one source for WMD in Iraq, and it was a fucking informant named Curveball that wasn't even a real person. It was a made-up informant that just like it got put into an intelligence report one time.
Okay, so I'm going to put something to you on that.
And then it started getting fucking looped.
What if all of that is true? But what if the layers of deception are far beyond even the narrative that's out there now that they lied? What if there were weapons of mass
Well, there definitely were
destruction?
because we sold them to them. I know that. That was in the 80s.
Yeah, and they,
Like
and
in the
they
early
would-
80s
and
we
they,
saw
they
that.
would rather have been exposed for no weapons of mass destruction than admitting that we put them there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did gas the Kurds, so we knew that they used them that time. That was in '91, right? I think after we left, or maybe '92.
Yeah.
It was between Gulf
And they
War
did move
and
out
Somalia.
that yellow cake,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I think the hardest thing that I have a hard time with for all of this is I think we all believe in the same things. I genuinely believe, just traveling through the country with Dan for all these years, that 99% of people are good in America and all that other stuff, for real.
I don't believe
we
in
don't
any-
see racism like ever. I mean, I can't even.
And when you do, but everybody's like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Shut up, dude."
Yeah.
We're not doing that anymore.
But the problem is, like, the respect you show other people in these interviews and everything else, some of these cultures don't show the same respect to you or just women in general all the way around. And I just don't know how you change that way of thinking for the world.
So that is true. However, my experience in Egypt is not my only experience in the Middle East. I lived in Baghdad for 5 years. Okay, I have my Iraqi brothers who I would give my life for and who I fought for their lives and they fought for mine. You know, it's like when real human greatness, like when you see someone rise out of the darkest places, that is a breathtaking thing. And I have seen that in every part of the world. I grew up in Africa. You know, like my love of humanity was born out of the African soil. The joy that I live with and carry in my life, I learned that in Africa, in the poorest places. You know, when I slept on the street with those kids in Angola, that I still, all these years later, is such a memory to me. You know, the warmth and the love that even a child that's been completely abandoned and traumatized and thrown out with the trash, you know, can bring you up in a moment like that. Kids that were victims of violence in South Africa, living on the streets, sniffing glue, doing whatever. And I took a bunch of them. I had a big fight with my boyfriend. The one I didn't want me to give them money. They're just going to buy, you know, get high. And he said, if you want to help them, give them food. So I said, fuck it. And I said, okay, kids, come on, let's go. And there was like a 7-Eleven type of store. And he called me the Pied Piper because, you know, the word spread and all these kids followed me into the store. And here I am in the store and I've got street kids coming to me and I'm thinking they're going to run for the candy and the, you know, and the chips and they're going for fruit and yogurt and holding it up and saying, is this okay? Can I have this? These are kids with nothing. Nothing. So like, I just would say to you, yes, there's no doubt that there are cultures that are incompatible with the way we live. How do you know? Well, pick a Muslim country where you would rather your daughter grew up there than here or in another Western country, where she can have a better life and she can have more rights. You can't point to one.
No.
There are things in those cultures that I like, for example, the way they are with family, they don't put their elderly in a shithole to die alone.
No, they have generational housing. Japan does that too, without all the weird shit with religion, though, to be frank.
I'm not saying you have to have it. I'm just saying that you can find things of value in all of these places. When it comes to women, I mean, I'm a strong, independent, outspoken woman. I didn't make relationships and friendships in those countries by lying about who I was. I was honest about all of that. And I found things to like and respect, and I was honest about the things that I would never accept, because that's just who I am. But that's why we don't need a global world, right? Because even in the U.S., there's things. This was not a cultural union. This was an economic and security union, and there's very different cultures in different parts of these countries. But we've been demonized and tortured into thinking that things that are naturally, innately human are somehow war crimes. Like when you gravitate towards your own, that's wrong. No, that's not true. Why in New York did all the Chinese gravitate towards each other? All the Italians? Because we do instinctively go towards what is the one thing we want from everybody in your relationships. How's your marriage going to survive? If your wife understands you, do you get each other? Right? At the core of that understanding is what? Respect. So when you have love and respect and understanding, that's like the Holy Grail. Right? That's what keeps and binds people together. So you can say, I hate living in, you know, Texas, but you can be overseas and you bump into someone who's from the US and you find out they're from Texas, you found your tribe.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a sense of culture, yeah.
Of course it is. So now we're being demonized for that.
And I think it's good also to have the cross-cultural respect. Like before the bomb ever existed, there was mutually assured destruction already, and it was the fact that guy from this country and guy from this country knew for an absolute certainty that I would fucking do everything I could to protect my country, including killing you and everybody you love, right?
Yeah.
And that's not like a threat or anything. It's just a reality. Like, I care a lot about my country, and you can operate from a sense of mutual respect there. And it was a guaranteed mutually assured destruction. You knew if you came and fucked, like, I like to think of civis Romanus, the phrase you would utter. And it's like, I'm a Roman citizen. If you fuck with me, they're going to come kill your whole family, right? You better just relax.
Yes.
I think.
Well, that's born out of the French Foreign Legion, right?
I think it's a good barricade to have that, but it only comes when there's national pride, and national pride now is cast as some kind of like intrinsically xenophobic thing. I don't know.
That's
like,
an intelligence operation.
It's a very bizarre attitude to have that wanting to preserve your own country or culture rather is somehow some negative thing. That it's. Like, how the fuck have we been tricked into believing that? It's so weird to me.
Well, that's how I felt watching the DNC last night. Like, you're seeing all these people, and you're like looking at them thinking, why are you going along with this? Like this is assuring your destruction, and you're going along with it.
We all saw what they did. I mean, they just got a president out of office, and then they said, "Great, here's the new person. Isn't it awesome?" And you're like, "No, you had the guy."
But the stuff they're talking about doing, like price controls, I've already illustrated. There's 2,000 years of history of price controls. It's always failed. It's always gotten worse. It's always led to more government control, right? It always does. Like they just don't I don't believe that the people who are voting for Democrats don't understand basic economics. I'm sure they do. I'm certain that they do. It's just their brains are broken. Like there's a problem now. They can't. The epistemology is gone, and there's no filter for real information.
Into a lie.
Yeah.
And if you look at all the people who vaccinated their kids, they don't want to be told. They don't want to hear that what they did. That they did something that may have put their child at risk. Mm-hmm. They bought into the lie. Now they're going to fight for that lie. So some of it is those layers that you talk about. Some of it is the people that are, the dark heart, the puppet masters that are directing how things go. Some of it are their lackeys, like the Obamas and the Susan Rices and the Lisa Monacos and, those kind of people. They may have a lot of power in this moment, but they're not real power brokers. Even, Obama, these people, they're still being used by somebody else. But then you have all the people that buy into it out of self-interest. Look at the establishment of the Democrat and the establishment of the Republican Party.
Against the wishes of George
exactly
Washington,
the
by
same.
the way. Yeah. Like George Washington warned about this. No parties. He said he was very 100%. Clear about this shit.
And George Washington, it's very interesting that you bring that up because when you ask me, how is this resolved? How do we fight this? Well, first of all, you have to speak up because your silence is taken as surrender and it is used against you as surrender. So speaking up is the first thing. Teaching your kids that you've got to lie in school and you don't say the wrong thing on your papers, otherwise you're not going to pass. You're not going to get through college. You're not going to get a job. Okay, that's got to stop. Right? Standing up for your principles and speaking up for those principles, that's number one. Number two is that you can't wait for someone else to do the heavy lifting. You can't stand on the banks of the river watching this country drown because a country is, as you said, a culture. That's what it's really about, preserving your way of life. And if you look throughout history, the British, when they conquered India, in battle was not where they met the greatest resistance. It was when they messed with the culture, with who you're allowed to marry and what the rules are. That's when the Indians really rose up.
And interestingly, I think that over time, the English took more from Indian culture than vice versa, to be frank, right? Like the number one, the national dish
is no longer fish and chips.
It's curry.
Yeah.
Is it really?
In England.
It is.
Which it's fine because it's better. It's better than fish and chips.
I like fish and chips.
No,
I don't like curry.
No,
Curry's better.
We're the curry side.
Oh, boy.
I like food that tastes like stuff. I don't want
smells like a baby diaper.
No, don't ever. How the fuck are you gonna vote in favor of British food? That's stupid. You're just making shit up now.
That's the only dish that I'll give them. Fish and chips is the only dish that I'll give them. Oh, that's it.
It's not even that good.
What about eggs and bacon?
It's
English
fine.
breakfast?
It's fine.
And a bit of beans on toast.
Yeah, none of that. None of that.
That's a great, Bob. I like how you went full Habsburg with your posture as well.
Yeah, I did too.
When you did a British accent.
I did too. Fish and chips. I'll put some vinegar on it. I'm good to go.
Oh God! If you have to add vinegar to your food that's already cooked, it's not good.
It's Southern.
I know. Oh man,
that's
I like
Long
the vinegar.
Silver's.
I do like the vinegar, but no way. That breaded fish, yuck.
Yeah,
that's great.
Disgusting. You don't want of a chicken tikka masala.
Yeah.
No.
Every day of the week?
No,
I
come
can't.
on.
Every day of the week.
That's a war crime.
I'll dip it in tartar sauce with a smile
garlic
and look at you.
Garlic naan and that tequila.
Versus a hush puppy,
masala.
right?
I can't do it.
But they don't have hush puppy. That's a Southern thing.
It is.
Yeah,
Americans,
that's a Southern thing.
Americans take everything and make it a little bit better.
Just a little better. That's all.
Right? Just like you, we took you and made you a little bit better. Right?
We made you a little bit better. That's all we did. That's all we did.
Thank
We're like
you.
3M.
I'm so grateful.
We're grateful that you were on the show. Now is the point in the show we get to this thing called the Drinkin' Bro of the Week.
Can you make me skinnier?
You're already
Younger?
good. You're good
Can we
to
do
go.
that?
You're good to go on all fronts. We don't need you any difference, all right? God
may-
made you this way.
We may be able to reverse the
You look
aging.
Do you believe in God?
Yeah, me? Mm-hmm. Tough call.
Oh,
boy.
See?
It's hard for me to believe in something I haven't seen, nor can prove.
You can see it all around you.
Boy, so I was in a coma for 11 days.
That's no excuse.
It's not, but
I'm just kidding.
but you always hear those stories, right? Of everybody sees something in the afterlife, or there was a moment, or I got to see my dead
And you got
grandparents.
He saw Scott Stapp from Creed singing with arms wide open.
I did. Well, I saw that, and then I saw Fish and Chips, and that was right in front of me, and I was like, oh, there is no God, because it's fish and chips. No, but I don't have proof, so therefore it's hard for me to say what it is.
Isn't your existence proof? Like, how did you come into existence? How did we go from nothing to here?
Well, I'll flip it on you, because I think I'm a special person, along with everybody else, right? Everybody does. But then you see people who are the worst pieces of shit on.
Why are you pointing at me while you're saying that?
You're an awful person. But
I don't think that's true, Dan.
I'm kidding. But you look at, I mean, there's a lot of people in the Middle East and all kinds of shit, right? We're just the worst human beings on the planet. It's hard for me to imagine.
The worst human beings on the planet, some of them are right here trafficking kids
100%,
in this country.
Yes, America too.
Yeah.
So
they work for a company called MVM Inc.
Right. So, but even take those into consideration. If there was a God, why would you create such horrific people?
Well, you don't. You create people and you give them free will, and they make those choices.
And then they become horrific on their own, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. And I believe that. So is there a spiritual side to me? Yes. Do I think that there is definitely something out there? Yes, but I just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And then lately, probably over the course of the last 10, 12 years, and I'm being totally genuine when I say this, it feels like we're in some weird sort of sim world. And I don't know if it's because of AI, if it's because of news stories, if it's because we're being lied to every day on everything we see and watch and do. It's getting harder and harder for me to believe in something, and a lot of people out there. And I know if you look at the younger generation, they're more or less religious than the older generations for sure.
Well, it depends on what you mean by younger generation. The generation younger than you and me, yes. The one before, the one younger than them are back into the religion again.
Yeah.
So the 14 to 19-year-olds are back into religion again.
And so that's what's hard for me. And I think the 14 to 19-year-olds are back into religion again because you see what's going on, and then you want something to believe in. And then in harder times or in easier times, when you don't really need something to believe in, then it's easier to live and all that other stuff. And just take me and Dan, for example. We're about 5 years apart.
Yeah.
Obviously, he fought overseas after 9/11 and all that other stuff. Well, when I was coming up, there was no wars or anything.
Yeah.
So therefore, it was just like, okay, great. There isn't that much bad in the world. I just didn't see it. And now we're seeing it more and more and more. The other thing that really, really bothers me in particular is is just being lied to every single fucking day on every single thing that I watch, read, and then I have to ask people, is this real or is this not real? And I don't like that.
Not just the being lied to, but the part where you're like, when you say, hey, this doesnn't seem right, they're like, oh, we fucking racist? Like, no, I just really wanted.
Oh, yeah, I get that.
What you're saying is bullshit, and it's obvious, dude. Stop lying.
I'm going to tell you 3 homework assignments.
Okay.
Okay, number 1, Turkey Tom. You know who Turkey Tom is? He's a social media influencer, YouTube guy. He does a takedown of this group of pedophiles on Twitter, on X. And when you listen to that, you're looking at pure evil right there. Okay, that's one thing. So, I think it helps you understand and figure these things out when you look at the dark side straight into the face. And that's one thing, because it's right there, and our kids are growing up with that knowledge. Number 2, do you know what hurtcore is? So hurtcore is a genre of pornography on the dark web, which is sadistic pornography.
You said hurt?
Hurtcore.
Like H-U-R-T.
Yes.
Like William Hurt.
So hurtcore is where you'll have things like people who like a blood show. So if they rape a baby, they want to cut the veins in a certain way in advance so that during the rape, when the baby bleeds to death, it's a spectacular blood show. Sometimes these are done with groups, and they direct the torture, in advance. It can be infants, it can be toddlers, it can be
I've never
teenagers,
even heard of this.
it can be babies. So this is right in your fingertips. This is why I say to you, don't look abroad for evil. It's right in front of you. Okay, and what technology has done is helped all of these people find each other, have a home, get wealthy, make money out of it, and propagate it proliferate it. I mean, it's on a massive scale. Then I will tell you what's happening right here in the state of Texas, and I can introduce you to someone I've known her a long time, and so if she'll talk to you, she works undercover a lot, so she is not out in the public. But this is a woman who's working right here in the state of Texas, has been responsible for assisting with the largest sex trafficking bus in the history of the state of Texas. She works very closely with law enforcement. Her organization is phenomenal. I mean, if you met these women, you wouldn't even know anything about it. You wouldn't have any idea. She sent me last night, I have 20 ads in my phone, which I could show you, of the number one target on the streets in the state of Texas today for kids, for prostitution, which is young boys who are worth 3 times more than girls right now. And what they want the trans ones, either the ones that they can turn. The holy grail is to turn someone, a normal boy, into being bi or trans or, whatever it is, or gay. And the number one customer for these kids is married couples.
Jesus Christ. See, even that, it's like, how do you believe in God after that? I get 3 kids, and I'm raising them now, and this is the hardest part for me.
Because these people walk in the dark, and they walk with darkness in their hearts.
But it still scares the shit out of me.
It should.
And like, I don't, it's hard to believe in a God when these people are walking around among us.
Free will.
I get it. But for me, faith-wise and emotionally and all that other stuff, that's why it's hard to believe.
Maybe you're looking in the wrong place. Because when I asked that guy from the Global Cult, when I asked him about why this thing with children, and the younger the children and the things that I've seen, the level of torture, right?
Have you seen videos?
Oh, yes. I have seen videos, but more than that, I have worked with people who are on the front line of this. So I have a very close friend and his wife who have been rescuing kids. He's been rescuing kids since the 90s. I've known him for more than 20 years. And I mean, he's told me one girl that they rescued had been sold, so many different times. She was sold at a slave market in Fort Worth, Texas. Okay, naked with a serial number in cages, sold in Fort Worth, Texas. At one point when she managed to escape, went back to her family, was at a church, was then trafficked by the youth pastor in the church, there was a satanic cell under the church. And this woman, who was the youth pastor, was working with a local detective. So the police were involved and the church was involved. And when she finally when she was sold from them to a cartel sicario who discovered accidentally one night when he was murdering someone and she distracted the person and that enabled him to kill them, he realized he could use her as a weapon to kill these guys. He put razor blades in her nails. He did all kinds of things. So she killed 64 people for him. I think by the time she was 21, if I remember correctly. Anyway, this girl lives in hiding in a place that's always in darkness. I think she was chipped by the cartels just the way you chip your dog and so on, all the rest of it. So life for her is still traumatic. But they worked with her, with doctors. They looked at the scars on her body. They did tests on, they verified medically and psychologically and evidentiary-wise what she had been through. They have worked on so many satanic cells under churches across America that, that I know have seen documented evidence of. One other case, this one came right through the layers of justice, and the Justice Department still wouldn't do anything about it. A young black girl trafficked through the foster care system, had 17 kids with her foster father, who was a police detective, now retired but is still protected, all the way up to the state governor's office. Okay, these kids they're documented by CPS. I've seen the documents, but never registered one of them. This is called human farming. Okay, this is when you're having kids and they're taking your kids and there's no official record of them. I have photographs of one of those kids, a little boy. I can tell you the things that this man described in his own words doing to this child, and the photographs of all the lacerations all over his body. These are indescribable things. Sometimes my kids will come into my bedroom and it's at night and I'm working and I'm, tears pouring down my cheeks because you're looking at absolute and pure evil. So for me, my first responsibility is to know the truth. Then my second responsibility is is to be unconscious of what I do not know, but nevertheless to speak up for that and to stand for something and to do everything that I can to bring that to people in a memorable way so that they will make that choice. Because I do believe what you believe, that most people are good. Evil exists everywhere. And if you read the Bible, and I don't read it all the time, I'm just, starting to try to get to know that, because I feel like that is the closest thing you have to the Word of God. And so rather than listen to someone else's interpretation, I want to go to the first-hand source as close as it gets. It says that, a sinner can repent right up until the last moment, but the wicked spit in the face of God. And for them, vengeance is mine, said the Lord. So you might be an instrument of that vengeance and get, your wish, right, to hold people accountable in some way. But I have a lot of peace from understanding how these things happen. I can't imagine if you're that girl, how do you believe in God?
Right, and that's where I go to.
I know.
So I'll go to the people that are on it, because I live a charmed life, and it's great, and I'm able to acknowledge that. But I look at the other people like you just described, and I say, how do you get up the next day, and how do you live a normal life? And that's why it's hard for me to believe at the end of the day.
Well, I have a friend who was trafficked. Interfamilial trafficking is a very big thing, trafficked by a wealthy family. And when she couldn't take anymore and she cried out to God, she's written a book about what happened. How her rapist was literally lifted up and thrown against the walls. And every time he tried to stand, he was thrown again. And, can I prove that happened? No. This is why these things always exist in this realm, right? Where you have victims speaking up and telling their stories, and it's so easy to dismiss and disregard. Because how do you prove something like that?
Right.
But at the end of the day, look at what it takes, your body, just to make all of this work. Like, this is a miracle. The fact that we exist. I have 4 puppies from the same litter, Belgian Malinois. Every one of them is different. Every one of them a unique personality. So that just created itself? It just happened?
I don't know. I don't know at the end of the day.
No, but think about it. That's That's ridiculous.
I know.
Maybe I'm perfectly fine not knowing. Actually, It doesn't matter to me how any of this got started.
Except that if it's a spiritual war, that's effectively
but that's not. But not really though, because spiritual wars, eventually all wars come down to one man cutting another man's throat. You know what I mean? And that's the dude I am.
I know. Some wars come down to 50 men raping a woman.
Well, then I'll kill all 50 of them then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll sleep
in my case, a mob of 200.
I'll sleep like a fucking baby at night too.
Exactly. And then last question, because we do this thing called Drinkin' Bro of the Week, which is someone who has inspired you or helped you become the person you are today. It's not that at all.
Okay.
Is that why you got married? Because we know your husband, obviously. Is that why you got married to the person you got married to? Was because you would always be safe and protected forever?
No. I married him because he was the first man I met that knew a lot more than me about a lot of things. And that was fascinating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think everybody likes to learn. It did help that, it's hard to say no to a man in uniform. That's a tough thing.
Yeah, Ross has that problem too.
Sure do. When I was in that Olive Garden uniform every day, no one said no. No one said. I saw 4 tours of Italy.
That's why I don't go to Olive Garden.
Well, you should. But everybody was just like, oh my gosh, you're the one who brought me the Chianti. And yeah, it was me. And then we would go home together. But for you, yes.
It was really good. I was living in a house full of Iraqis. And when we were friends for years before we got together. And when he would come over to visit, he would sit in the kitchen with the Iraqis talking. He had the same respect and regard for humanity that I had. That was very important to me. And he wasn't, he didn't carry prejudice in his heart. He was, and he was smart. And he had, he was awarded the Soldier's Medal, right, which is the peacetime equivalent of the Medal of Honor. So he was like a real life superhero. Mm-hmm. And that of course, that makes you feel like you will always be safe in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just always my guess.
But there's a lot left out of the brochure at that time. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Yeah.
He's also he's a good hang too.
Yeah.
Like he's sharp, smart, knows a lot of stuff about history, funny. He's a fucking, retarded. It's just funny as shit.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love it.
You would definitely get captured by him for sure.
I love it.
Yeah.
Capture me tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now's the point in the show we get to the Drinkin' Bro of the Week, which is someone who has inspired you or helped you become the person you are today. Who would you like to give the Drinkin' Bro of the Week to?
See, that's a tough one because it's going to sound cliched, but I am South African. And, there is no greater example to humanity than Nelson Mandela.
Yeah. I knew you were going there. Or Oscar Pistorius, yeah.
No.
What?
No.
He was a champion
No.
in the Olympics. He was
Disabled? No.
Okay.
Don't care.
Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a Morgan Freeman story for you.
Oh.
My husband.
there we go.
My husband is no longer a fan.
Whoa, what happened? Did he take off his fake arm?
No, I bumped into him at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I was chatting to him, and I said I just had a baby, and he said, and still breastfeeding, I see.
Shut
That's really funny. He is an old pervert, though.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know
He's
about
married
that.
to his
but
granddaughter, so yeah, it's
like
a
his
weird
step-granddaughter
He is?
or some shit.
Step-granddaughter,
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. You're still breastfeeding right there. Okay. All right, Miss
So
Logan.
for some reason, because
Oh,
my
Miss
husband is
Logan.
pretty secure, but for some reason that really annoyed him.
Pissed me off too. You
Yeah.
met my wife earlier.
Yeah, I'd slap the
Somebody
shit
was
out
like,
of
"Oh,
him."
hey, you look like you're still breastfeeding. You had a baby."
Snatch that fake arm off of him
Exactly.
and slap him with his own arm.
Oh, Miss Daisy, I can't do that, Miss
I
Daisy.
just want to say for the record, since we're in Drinking Bros, they're real, and all those people posting out there can go fuck themselves.
Wait, you're talking about Morgan
Your
Freeman's
breasts
arm.
The girls.
Oh, I see.
The girls.
Your girls.
Yeah.
Your girls. Okay, great.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
No,
So that's
wonder
some
you believe
breaking
in-
news for you on your show.
No.
We appreciate it, yeah. The breasts are real.
Ross believes in God now.
Yeah.
All of a
Yeah.
sudden, he's
Now
like-
I believe
he's
in
going
God.
to church
Yes.
this Sunday.
Be there on Sunday.
That's all it took.
This Sunday.
Join me this
all it
Sunday. I'll be at church worshiping whoever gave her those. Because I don't remember those on 60 Minutes. No.
Yeah, because I was
That's
under
funny.
strict instructions. I had to hide him.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Once the cameraman's, I was on a U.S. base actually by the airport, and the camera was a little high, and I had a T-shirt on, and oh yeah, it went on fire when that episode of 60 Minutes went out, and my producer was hauled in and he was told like, man, you got to watch that. We can't have that again.
Why? It would have brought more people in. You think I'm watching for Leslie Stahl's
No,
breasts?
Walter
No,
Cronkite.
dude.
I was watching Cronkite for the mustache.
Yeah, you were.
I didn't even hear what he said.
Nope, same. But yeah, now it's
Okay,
Leslie
my
Stahl
favorite-
and Anderson
my
Cooper and those
favorites-
guys. It's a snooze fest over there.
Mike Wallace and Ed Bradley. Those were
And they're
the
dead.
days. Yeah, they're unfortunately,
Everybody's dead
yes.
now.
But
Yeah.
they were amazing.
Yeah, it seemed like it. It seemed like they were OGs. You were an
Yeah.
OG to me. It seems like this crew, especially Leslie Stahl. God, I hate her so fucking much. Because I watched 60 Minutes I watched it almost every night. I think of my life.
You know what? Honestly, what happened? They took the moral heart out of that show, moral courage, when they went after me. After that, it was over. So it's not worth watching anymore.
Well, that's what it seemed
unfortunately.
like. And then now they've got their own stories. And you and I both know if you change one word or two in a sentence,
Yeah.
you can slant it either way you want. It can be comedic, it could be tragic.
Yeah.
All of those
But
things.
how can you put Bill Gates on and do a profile and not ask him about the girls in India that were sterilized with his vaccines?
I
and
agree.
The kids in Sudan that were disabled. They're disabled because of you. I went to South Sudan. I was there during the Civil War. I know how little those people have. And you don't even ask?
I know.
Or about the millions of genetically modified mosquitoes he released into the southeastern United States. That's a weird thing.
Yeah,
too.
you can't have a...
Epstein, they
Yeah.
glossed over that. I mean, they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything but interview him about, I watched, it was Anderson Cooper, it was fake meat. And they were like, oh, tell us about this fake meat you're growing in the middle of Iowa or wherever it is.
Well, they had Yuval Noah Harari on.
Yeah.
You know, let's talk about that. Oh, what about rendering the entire population of India and Africa, what do you call them, useless eaters? Oh, yeah. Who have no purpose for being on Earth? Oh, yeah, I see. Yeah. I mean, that's...
It's all changed. Journalism's changed, and it all sucks right now.
Has it really changed, or we see it for what it was? It has changed, but at the same time, I think this presence that was there, if you look at, on the one side, you have all these intelligence agencies, right? Mike Smith talks about this in his movie Into the Light. Mm-hmm. So you have, CIA, DIA, NRO, and NSA, and so on and so on, right? All these three-led agencies. Well, what do you have on the other side? ABC, CBS, NBC, NPR. I mean, more three-letter agencies. William Paley started CBS. He was a former naval intelligence officer. So were they ever really?
It seemed like it on the
Separate,
so
you know
well.
what I mean?
Here's the thing. So it seemed like it on the way up, and then it all changed. And I don't necessarily know that it was for one party or another. It is now, but at the time, right when you were leaving,
that's the
right when you were
party-
leaving, I think is the best example. Is when you started looking at ratings. Let's take cable first. Fox News was just dominating, and they still are. They still got the highest ratings there is.
Yeah.
And then CNN looked at it, and they were like, well, shit, we've got to have a counteractive to Fox, so we got to go far left. MSNBC just said, hey, we're got to go left. The ones that were in the middle were headline news, and if you remember, got canceled because that was no longer good enough. You wanted news with an opinion on it, and an opinion that was yours. And then for the local stuff, like let's take David Muir. David Muir, if you watch those telecasts, because I'm still one of the few people who watches nightly news and local news, I think local news gets it right more than national news.
Sure. National
News, it still feels like there's something from the producer that's called down where there's a line in the dialogue where it's just like, oh, and by the way, that was Donald Trump who did that. But on to the next story, there was a fire in Tallahassee, and you're like, okay, cool, you didn't have to throw that in at the end.
When your
but you
newsroom is
did.
full of people who hate Trump.
Yes.
I mean, it's full of it. So you don't even have to direct it.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't even consider reporting the truth.
Or hiring. So now they're not even hiring.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
No
and
way.
that's the difference. And Fox is guilty of it, too, on their own regard, but it's salacious news on cable, whereas ABC, CBS, NBC, all the stuff that you were in,
I would say that
it felt like it was on the up and up for a while.
The most revealing moment with Fox News was on Arizona 2020, when they called that election for Biden, that state for Biden with less than 10% of the vote counted.
Yeah.
They showed you who's really running Fox News.
Because the Secretary of State was running for governor, and she was in charge of her own election for governor
Katie
as well,
Hobbs.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
all right, maybe we should take an eye.
They hired
like
a
quick
Democratic
peek.
operative to be their election results coordinator for the night of the elections.
And you see that shit happen over and over again. Like the fucking a guy who was in the top 10 percentile of the DOJ ends up at the fucking Manhattan DA's office. Why?
Who gives up power, prestige, money, etc., to go and take a lower job?
Get the fuck out of here, man.
It's crazy.
On.
So the thing is, I think that these forces were always at play, but they took over and became dominant. You know what I mean? And then at the same time, they showed, wait a minute, what we did to her, if you don't stay in the lines, then it's going to happen to you.
And it did. It happened to Megyn Kelly. It happened. I mean, there was countless others after you.
Well, Bari Weiss.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, people like Matt Taibbi, and Michael Schellenberger, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't follow the line, your only option is really independent media, because otherwise, I mean, even Newsmax, look at the reporting on the war in Ukraine. You try to report a different version of that, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
By the way, speaking of that, Germany just pulled funding from Ukraine.
Did they really? Good for them.
Guess they're all done.
Well, we are too. We should be at least. We'll see. We'll
that's
see how it all
very
shakes out.
interesting.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, Europe
very
is no longer
interesting.
funding Europe's war, so it'll just be us again.
Well,
So-
thank God. Hopefully the administration changes and we'll see.
No, not Barry Weishoff's storage wars, you fucking retard.
That would be awesome if it was.
The chat, people are dumb.
Yeah, but they love you. They love you.
Bari Weiss, former editorial editor for the New York Times.
No, we know her. She actually she teaches down here in Austin.
Who has her own media company now,
correct,
right?
Yeah, she's got her own media company. She doesn't. I don't know if she's actually teaching classes here, but she and Bogosian and a bunch of other people have the University
Started
of
at
Austin.
college. Yeah.
I know this will be crazy to you, but whenever I go, they had me come into UT Austin to teach a few classes. No surprise, they didn't invite me back.
Weird. Isn't that weird how that
Isn't
works?
That's weird.
Yeah, that is strange.
Why?
That's
What did
strange.
you do? Did you talk about how they're real the whole time?
I told the truth.
Oh,
Yeah, they don't like that. They don't like that at all. Go to the SEC schools. You're good. Well, shit, they're in the SEC now. Maybe they'll change. We'll see. We'll
So,
see.
but again, if you look at all of that happening with the media through the eyes of this is an intelligence operation, then it's not just that CNN decided they needed to counter that. They would direct it to counter that and pushed in that direction. And these people, we're herd animals, right? And we gravitate towards each other because there's safety in numbers. So it's not hard to herd people where you want them to go.
I agree.
yeah, but the herd, this is all part. Like we've got to get out of here, but look into how people like Ford and Rockefeller reshaped American education in the early part of the 20th century and how it became about spitting out compliant workers. Like this is all. This has been a very.
And then what the Franklin School did.
Yeah, the Franklin School. Yeah, people think that this is like a relatively new thing that's happening, but this has been going on for hundreds of years now, and countries much older than our own.
Yeah, I would say it's been going on since look at where we are, 2024, 2024 years.
You think so?
Oh, you think Jesus was involved?
Yeah, I think Jesus walks. Okay. Back to the Illuminati. Kanye
I'm gonna make a believer of you.
Kanye did that.
I'm gonna make a believer of you.
It's fine. I'm ready to believe. I just want shit to be good again. That's all. That's all I want. Where can everybody find you?
LaraLogan.com and on X and on Wimkin. Are you guys on Wimkin?
I'm not on Wimkin, no.
What the fuck is that?
No, what is Wimkin?
Wimkin.
Does it sound like something with a fucking lollipop guild or some shit?
Oh, are you guys on Wimkin? Yeah, I've been on Wimkin for years.
I think we might be too tall for that
Wimkin.
app. I just feel like I might be.
Okay,
I'm 6'3".
They're the only people who didn't sell, hand over user data to the January 6th Select Committee.
Okay.
So they fought that battle. It took like more than 2 years. So they're kind of a little bit like Facebook, a little bit like X. It's kind of, you can do a lot on that platform. So I'm on Wimkin and X, and Truth TV started now. Did you see that?
Yeah, sure did.
Yeah. So I'm figuring out. I got to figure that one out, but I'm going to be on there. I'm trying to get my own show sort of up and running.
Perfect. Well, you're welcome back on this one anytime.
Thank you.
So every time you're in Austin, pop on by the show. This has been a blast today. Super out of control. I love it. She whipped something at my face. Threw me some fucking hard AF seltzer. Does it get any better than this? It sure doesn't.
I broke news.
You sure did.
Yeah.
Well,
we did all the things.
Yeah, we'll see if that shows up in any of the mainstream media. Won't report it, but those titties are real.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Just from out of everything we talked to for the last 2 hours, dem titties are real.
That's gonna be her. That'll be her next book. That'll be her next book.
Dem titties are real from Lara Logan.
Actually, one of my old friends and former boyfriend, I saw him in Mozambique during the floods, and when I saw him, I'd been there at least a week, and he said, "Logan, I knew you were here." And I said, "How?" And he said, "Because when I was up north, I heard these two soldiers arguing about this journalist, and I said, I can help you boys out. They're definitely real."
And there's no better way to end the show than that. Go to iTunes, rate the show triple D, if that's what it is, or a 5-star and leave a quick review. Also, head on over to Spotify. It's just a 5-star, and you can walk away. For D'Anthony Hollaway, I'm Ross Patterson. This is the Drinkin' Bros Podcast. Good night.